Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Pirates. Obtain the Big Mom talent at the beginning. Chapter 61. Even though their idea was shameless, it was somewhat reasonable. If Luo Shu failed in this public execution and his companions were rescued by Monkey D. Dragon, then although he would not be punished, he would be humiliated. It might even become a joke. This is not alarmist, because this public execution was initiated by Luo Shu, and he only discussed it with the warring states during the period. If the final result falls short due to his own strength, then Luo Shu will be blamed for it, and it will be seriously affecting his future promotion speed. Too naive. Do you really think you can succeed? Since you want to die so much, I will send you on your way. Spear of Judgment. Whoosh. At this moment, Luo Shu, who had been motionless, suddenly appeared in his hand, a spear made of thunder and lightning. After wrapping around the senior armed color hockey, he threw it out in an instant. The target was naturally to rescue Ha Ku's Karas. This move can be regarded as one of the top 3 single-target attack moves developed by Luo Shu so far. In fact, Luo Shu has been very vigilant since he stopped, because he was afraid something unexpected happened. So on the other side of Yishao, as soon as a problem arose, he responded directly. The attack he sent out, let alone the current Karas, even if it was intact and did not suffer any damage, it would not you might be able to catch it head-on, but even if you manage to survive, you still have to lose half your life. No. Phew. Boom. Go to hell. Navy. After Monkey D. Dragon discovered Luo Shu's movements, he transformed his body into an element and rushed towards him, just to block Luo Shu's attack for Karas. But he was still too slow and was executed when he saw the distance. The platform was about 20 meters away. Karas, who was still flying in the air, was penetrated by Luo Shu's lightning spear and exploded into a bloody mist. He was so dead that he couldn't help but roared. He couldn't help but roar for a long time. After being so angry, if he doesn't teach the person in front of him a profound lesson today, he will not be worthy of the position of leader of the Revolutionary Army. Karas is one of the outstanding ones among the first group of people who followed him, and he is the leader of the Revolutionary Army. He spent a lot of effort to train the other party to become the commander of the Northern Army, and he would have a better chance of becoming a top strong person in the future. But now the other party died tragically in front of him, because the young navy in front of him made his revolution. The road became extremely difficult. At this moment, Meng Qi Dilong was completely furious. If Luo Shu was not killed, he might not be able to understand his mind for the rest of his life. Boom. Don't think that a sneak attack will work. Monkey D. Dragon, I have been guarding against you for a long time. Monkey D. Dragon, who appeared in front of Luo Shu, was about to cut his neck with the wind blade in his hand, but was blocked by Luo Shu with his arms crossed. At the same time, he did not forget to taunt him. He had just thrown a thunderbolt. Behind the spear, he didn't even look at Karas, as if he already regarded him as a dead person. Instead, he was on guard against Monkey D. Dragon's sneak attack. Gravity Knife Tiger. During the moment when the two were in a stalemate, a sound of breaking wind sounded, and a purple slash that seemed to distort the space was seen. It was like a tiger and rushed towards Monkey D. Dragon. You didn't need to guess. It was an attack from a smile. Hurricane Barrier. Monkey D. Dragon, who was wrestling with Luo Shu, immediately retreated quickly. At the same time, manic storms condensed in front of him, and then his body began to transform into elements. He successfully dodged Yishao's attack, but his cold sweat broke out on his back. If it had been a little later, he might have confessed here. And because he joined the battle with a smile, Monkey D. Dragon regained some sense. He understood deeply that just one Luo Shu could do it. It is already difficult to deal with, and if you add a smile, it won't be long before I am afraid that I will be defeated in the G20 branch. Maybe it was a mistake for him to bring Karas to rescue Haku. As the leader of the Revolutionary Army, if he couldn't even tell which side was lighter and which was heavier, then he might have been stupid to death. But there is no regret medicine in this world. Now the commander of the Northern Army, Karas, whom he cultivated with all his heart, has died in this G20 branch. Among them, as for Haku on the execution platform, he had no chance to save him. In other words, in the hands of Luo Shu and Yishao, it would be great if he could survive. It was just a fool's dream to think of saving others. No, my revolutionary road is not over yet, I cannot die here. This time we just encountered some bumps in the road. Monkey D. Dragon, when did you become so impulsive? Although Kara's died, there are still many outstanding companions in the Revolutionary Army. At worst, they are training a Northern Army commander. Sorry Haku. Forgive me for not being able to save you, but don't worry, I will avenge this revenge for you sooner or later. Thoughts filled Meng Qi Dilong's mind. Finally, he took a deep look at Yi Xiao and Luo Shu who came to him, and then turned into a strong wind and rushed into the sky in the distance at a very fast speed. It is really shocking. Just now he has figured out that it is unwise to stay and fight with Luo Shu and Yi Xiao. Moreover, the execution is about to begin. He cannot accept the scene of another companion dying in front of his eyes. The so-called out of sight, out of mind. Only by doing this can the pain caused by the death of Karas and Haku be slightly relieved. No need to chase him, he is still very smart. Under such circumstances, he still made the right choice. He is worthy of being the leader of the Revolutionary Army. You must have figured out something. Seeing the smile next to him, he had the idea of hunting down Monkey D. Dragon. Luo Shu shook his head and said in a calm voice, but there was a hint of surprise in his words. It was just that Monkey D. Dragon left, which was a bit unexpected. He didn't expect it. If it were anyone else, he would probably fight to the death with the two of them under the stimulation of hatred, even if he knew he was losing. But this Monkey D. Dragon could actually regain his sanity in an instant. It can be said that the other party's mind is really not simple. A dangerous guy indeed. However, I had to thank Major General Luo Shu before, otherwise I might have become a sinner in Beihai. After listening to Luo Shu's words, he smiled and put the sword back into his waist. After first sighing in a low voice, his face became extremely embarrassed and he said to Luo Shu with a wry smile. What he was talking about was the fact that Karas used his attack to rush to the execution platform. Without Luo Shu's thunder blow, the current outcome would be really unpredictable. Yi Xiao now feels a little scared just thinking about the moment before. For people like him, what they are most afraid of right now is the misunderstanding of civilians. If he were called a sinner of Beihai, he would probably die to apologize. Although the probability is low, it is indeed possible. Execution. Phew. Another minute passed. After Luo Shu gave the order, the navy man standing on the execution platform raised the long knife in his hand and effortlessly pierced Haku's heart. In this way, a generation of revolution, the commander of the Northern Army and an elite captain both died in the G20 branch of the Navy. The most important thing is that the leader of the Revolutionary Army actually abandoned his companions and evacuated alone. These things that sound incredible are connected in together. And Luo Shu, who led this execution, has also become the protagonist. Many newspapers have begun to prepare, even the Warring States period. Luo Shu's contribution is too great. Of course, he has to do something in advance, such as reporting this matter. Report it truthfully to Wulaoxing. See what these great masters have planned. We are victorious. Long live Major General Luo Shu. Long live Major General Luo Shu. In the G20 branch, the Navy soldiers in the distance roared in unison the moment they saw Haku's death, venting all the worries in their hearts, and their loyalty to Luo Shu also skyrocketed. Major General Luo Shu, I believe that after this incident is over, you may be promoted. I would like to extend my congratulations to you in advance. As for the gift, we will send someone to deliver it later. I hope you don't dislike it then. That's right, that's right. Major General Luo Shu is worthy of being our hero in Beihai. Even the leader of the Revolutionary Army would have died in the G20 branch if he hadn't been a fast runner. In fact, we should first thank Major General Luo Shu for remembering to send someone to protect us before the battle began. Otherwise, wouldn't we have to die in this war? How can anyone still survive to this day? Quote. After seeing Luo Shu, those people who were brought here by Thor, Drake, and Baccarat, regardless of the gravel or the big hole on the ground, all ran to Luo Shu and surrounded him. A series of compliments began. Maybe they were born to be this kind of people. Their words were very pleasing to the ear, and Luo Shu was almost praised to the sky. All right everyone, I'll send the Navy to take you back. Thank you so much for coming this time. In the future, if there are pirates or revolutionary troops invading your country, or villages and towns, please contact the G20 branch as soon as possible. As long as I, Luo Shu, stay in Beihai for a day. I will never allow lawless elements to appear here to cause trouble. Maybe justice sometimes you'll be late, but you'll never be late. Also, for those of you watching today's execution, if any of you want to join the Navy, you can come to the G20 branch to sign up. As long as you dare to fight and have justice in your heart, why can't you bring a better life to your family? Luo Shu had a slightly proud smile on his face. He first arranged for these people to leave, and he did not forget to give a few words of speech. Finally, he made a wave of advertisements for the Navy. He believed that after this battle, these people in Beihai, the perception of the Navy should change a lot, so that young people can volunteer to join. Ha 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 ha, I knew the Navy would win. Major General Luo Shu is invincible. What a bullshit leader of the Revolutionary Army, he is really vulnerable compared to him. I am now a little glad that I live in this sea area. I actually wanted to leave before, but now I think about it, I am really retarded. It is really great that the Navy can send a general like Luo Shu to the North Sea. I will let my son join the Navy later. If he can become a subordinate of Major General Luo Shu, he will really be proud of his ancestors. Are you overthinking it? Your son is so bear-like, and you still want to become a subordinate of Major General Luo Shu. Perhaps only my son has that qualification. I also want to join the Navy, release the justice in my heart, and wipe out all the scum in the sea. Quote. As the picture on the big screen disappeared, everyone in Beihai woke up from the shock. All the civilians who watched the execution had smiles on their faces. They said that they had not waited for someone for a long time. So happy. It is indeed what Luo Shu thought. Many people have decided to join the Navy now because they see hope. Most of them thought the Navy was incompetent if they did not join before. However, this idea was abruptly broken by Luo Shu. This guy is so arrogant. Why would the top brass of the Navy send him to Beihai? Are there many pirates here? The worst thing in the future is that we just don't go to the sea areas under his jurisdiction. That's right, since the North Sea is so big, we don't need to touch that iron law. I really hope that the pirates from the New World will appear in the North Sea and kill this Navy. Even if they go to other sea areas, the generals of those branches may have to make changes because of this incident. You won't turn a blind eye or close one eye to me like you did before. But having said that Luo Shu is really powerful. Even the leader of the Revolutionary Army can't kill him. I really can't think of anyone else who can kill him. Could it be the three emperors who rule the New World? Well, but there was no chance for them to conflict with Luo Shu. But the pirates living in the North Sea are feeling uncomfortable. They are miserable now. They are like eggplants beaten by frost. They gather together and keep pouring wine into their mouths, trying to relieve their feelings for Luo Shu, fear. At the same time, they were thinking about various ways to each other to make their lives better in the future, and the curse on Luo Shu would not stop here. If not, its strength would make them feel powerless. I'm afraid these pirate groups in the North Sea have long formed an alliance to defeat the G20 branch. You have all seen Luo Shu's strength. Prepare a generous gift. I will personally go and apologize to him. I hope he can be an adult and ignore the villain's mistakes. I have a hunch that if the other party still holds on to what happened before, our Germa 66 will be destroyed in his hands sooner or later. Gaji, who had returned to the war house with his 4 children, looked extremely ugly. Luo Shu's strength exceeded his imagination, which made him feel how ridiculous his previous thoughts were. To provoke such a person, this existential enemy cannot be described with the word stupid, but seeks self-destruction. He doesn't want the Vinsmoke clan to go into the abyss under his leadership, so he can only ease the relationship with Luo Shu. I hope that the other party can forgive his sons for what they did before. Don't we have any other options? How could we, Germa 66, be stepped on by others again and again? Vinsmoke IG still can't forget Luo Shu's arrogant face when he used the phone bug to contact him. Now that he heard his father's words, this made him, who always thought highly of himself, feel very unhappy. Comfortable, so he almost gritted his teeth and said to Gaji. As for Niji and Yangji, they stood there silently, without even looking at them. They still couldn't forget that Luo Shu and the leader of the Revolutionary Army were on the screen. Monkey D. Dragon style during the battle, they have no doubt that the other party can easily destroy the entire Germa 66. I think what my father said makes sense. A person like Luo Shu, even without talking about the power behind him, even with his own strength alone, is not something that we Germa 66 can provoke. Instead of resolving the previous grievances is the best choice. However, things like ordinary treasures may not be able to attract Luo Shu's attention. The generous gift we need to prepare cannot be too simple. Before Gaji could speak, Reiju expressed her opinion first. She was actually very happy because her father had seen through this matter. Otherwise, she would have always felt that her family was in danger and there was always the possibility of being destroyed by Luo Shu, possible. It seems that I can only find a devil fruit or a famous sword. Gaji ignored his eldest son. Instead, he pinched his chin and murmured in a low voice. Yes, his thoughts were similar to Reiju. If he took ordinary treasures, it would be impossible to impress Luo Shu, and it would even negative effects, and the rarest things in this sea are devil fruits and famous swords. And in the legend, the pure gold that can make people immortal, even the world government and the celestial dragons have been keeping a close eye on it for a long time, but so many years have passed, but there is still no news about the lantern fish. Although Gaji has heard about it, he will not consider it at all. Such unrealistic things. Where are you going? Now that the Navy's G20 branch has returned to calm, a large number of Navy soldiers have joined the construction team and are dealing with the dilapidated battlefield. However, Luo Shu and Yishao are sitting at a dining table eating something very casually. This time both of them were exhausted, especially Luo Shu. I haven't decided yet, I should stay in Beihai. This is my hometown, but now because of your appearance, I am very relieved about it. A smile gradually raised the corners of his mouth, and said to Luo Shu with a grateful face, no one would not care about the safety of his hometown, especially someone like him, a person who cares deeply about civilians. I would like to thank you for your help before, otherwise the commander of the Northern Army of the Revolutionary Army would not have died in my hands so easily. If you don't have anywhere you want to go, you might as well stay here. In addition to practicing every day, you can also use the Navy's intelligence to understand the direction of the world. If your hands are itchy, you can arrest a few pirates. Or have a discussion with me. Anyway, you are going to join the Navy in the future. Wouldn't it be better to get used to this kind of life now? Luo Shu joked with a smile. To this day, he has personally realized the benefits of having strong subordinates. If the strength of Drake and Thor can rival Kara's, even without the arrival of a smile, he can also easily disrupt the Revolutionary Army's rescue. At the same time, he also admires his luck in being able to get the help of a top powerhouse like Yishao. Otherwise, the chance of his public execution this time becoming a joke will be greatly increased. With him with the current strength, it is impossible to face the combination of Monkey D. Dragon and Kara's, but who can explain such things as fate? There is a saying that makes sense, that is, luck is also a kind of strength. Then excuse me, Major General Luo Shu. Yishao wanted to refuse Luo Shu's invitation, but found that he had no reason. If he left here, he would only go to other casinos in Beihai, which can also be called experiencing life. But after so many years, he has had enough of that kind of life. Days later, I simply agreed and prepared to change my way of life. Come on, drink. Luo Shu's face immediately became happy. He raised the wine glass in his hand and gestured to Yishao before drinking it in one gulp. For him, today was a great blessing. First, he defeated the leader of the Revolutionary Army and killed the revolutionary leader, the commander of the Northern Army and an elite captain. This will make him famous. At the same time, it will severely intimidate the lawless elements in Beihai, and it can also completely change the civilians' view of the Navy. Secondly, the Navy he will be rewarded. After all, his contribution this time is not insignificant, and his achievements are real. Thirdly, it is Xiao. He believes that during the period when he abolished the Shichibukai policy, it can more or less change some of Yishao's character, making it no longer so holy. This way, after conquering the opponent in the future, it will be easier to use. It was not until nightfall that Luo Shu returned to his residence. When he fought with the dragon today, suffered some minor injuries. He just went to see a military doctor and got some medicine, which helped him recover quickly. Buckle, come in, sir, how is your injury? Just when Luo Shu was lying on the bed, preparing to sleep, there was a knock on the door. The person who came was none other than his little secretary Bakala. After she came in, she asked Luo Shu with a look of concern. In fact, she has long wanted to come and express her condolences to Luo Shu, but she has never made time or had the chance. Due to this war, the building of the Navy G20 branch was severely damaged. Although she does not have to do the dirty work, she still has to deal with other things. That little injury is nothing to worry about. It's very late, Baccarat, go back and rest early, we'll talk about anything tomorrow. Looking at Baccarat with a hot figure, Luo Shu couldn't help but help his forehead, suppressing the fire burning in his heart, but he didn't know how long he could hold on, so he issued an eviction order. Sir, do you hate others? Are you in such a hurry to drive people away? Baccarat didn't seem to hear Luo Shu's words. She walked slowly to her commander and asked with a blushing face. You are playing with fire. Baccarat, grabbing Baccarat's funny hand before, Luo Shu looked directly at the other person and said playfully. He is not Lu Shahui who can sit still. He just issued an order to expel Baccarat, which is already his bottom line. Since the other party won't leave, then he can't be blamed. Sir, after Baccarat said something very affectionately, Luo Shu hugged her whole body, and everything was left unsaid. Early the next morning, the headlines published by various newspapers were almost all about Luo Shu. Even Morgans of the New World attached great importance to this matter. Early in the morning, he created the World Economic News under his management. The news is spread in the New World in batches using news birds, and there may also be shadows of the Navy and the world government mixed in. At the same time, countless newspapers were floating in the sky over the Grand Route and the Four Seas, telling the world about the glorious deeds of the legendary naval rear admiral, which was the plot of Luo Shu's battle with the Revolutionary Army in the G20 branch. As the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Long was crowned by the world government as the most vicious criminal in the world. It is obvious that he is strong and he is definitely not a weakling. Even a brainless person would not think that the other party is a weakling. But he failed to save his companions and was repelled by Luo Shu. As for Yi Xiao, he was indirectly forgotten by the newspapers. Major General Luo Shu, the proud one of heaven, was able to fight against the leader of the Revolutionary Army alone at the age of 17. What kind of talent is this? Shock. Rear Admiral Luo Shu of the Navy headquarters actually killed the commander of the Revolutionary Northern Army and defeated the leader of the Revolutionary Army. And among millions of people, only one person can awaken the domineering power. Major General Luo Shu first became a hero in the North Sea and wiped out many pirate groups in the North Sea. Now he defeated the leader of the Revolutionary Army again. Has a new naval hero emerged? Can he take over Iron Fist Garp's throne? If Major General Luo Shu fully grows up, can he lead the Navy and end the era of great pirates? The youngest rear admiral in the history of the Navy, he became famous throughout the world in one battle. Perhaps he will also become the youngest lieutenant general, or marshal. With invincible talents, coupled with the so-called strongest natural devil fruit, the position of the strongest man in the world may change hands soon. The nemesis of Sin, Major General Luo Shu, if he enters the new world, the three emperors may be greatly threatened. With such a figure in the Navy, will the world government withdraw its policy on the Shichibukai? Although most of these headlines are touting Luo Shu, but people with a discerning eye can see that Luo Shu deserves these evaluations. Those photos of the battle with Monkey D. Dragon are very clear, coupled with the dilapidated ground and various backgrounds. Anyone who sees it can imagine that time how tragic the battle was. At this time, the New World Moby Dick, a huge pirate ship like a whale, was holding a banquet. Sitting on the main seat was Whitebeard, who was known as the strongest man in the world. Edward Newgate, the man he is now, is not the old man who was seriously ill and covered with hanging bottles 8 years later. Dad, look, a great general has appeared in the Navy. And now all the news headlines are praising him. Marco, who had a pineapple-shaped head, held a wine bottle in one hand and a stack of newspapers in the other hand. He came to his father and said it with great respect, but there was a bit of sourness in his words. Yes, he felt a little uncomfortable, especially because there was a newspaper headline that said that Luo Shu could definitely defeat Whitebeard in the future and win the title of the strongest man in the world. Gu la 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 la. What an interesting kid. Has he grown up already? He has the domineering look of a king, but he chose to become a navy. With these deeds, it seems that he has ulterior motives. But, so what? My head is here. If he has the ability to take it away, why not give him the title of the strongest man in the world? It is not easy to end the new era started by Gall D. Roger. Whitebeard took the newspapers, read them carefully, threw them aside, and said with a smile, but the last sentence had a profound meaning. He saw the world very clearly. If the other party was to end this era is probably more difficult than killing yourself. How much strength and power is needed to do it? Even Whitebeard has never thought of such a thing. But when he took a look at his while the sons were happily eating meat and drinking wine, they sighed silently in their hearts. Since he was young, he has always had the dream of having a family. When he realized it, he cherished it extremely, but he forgot one thing: only when the chick leaves the eagle can it fly high. But when he wanted to understand, he found that it was too late. There was also a factor in this that his son was not living up to expectations. Just now he was still thinking, how great it would be if I could have a son with a talent like Luo Shu on my ship. In this way, I could successfully take over his duties and lead the Whitebeard pirates to continue to dominate the New World. However, it is a pity that the entire sea no one in the bandit group has a talent comparable to Luo Shu. Having lived for such a long time, he certainly knows the importance of a person's talent. If his desire to protect his family had not been so strong, perhaps among his current sons, there can also be a few people who can carry the banner. No one can take away Dad's title of the strongest man in the world. If anyone has this idea, we will kill him without Dad taking action. That's right, only Dad deserves this title. The Whitebeard pirates are the best in the world. What kind of bullshit navy has the guts to come to our territory and try to sink them into the sea in minutes? Quote. Under the leadership of Marco, all the captains of the Whitebeard pirates shouted in unison. They all admired Whitebeard greatly, and the words, Dad, in their mouths also came from the heart, as if they regarded him as his biological father. Of course, thanks to Edward Newgate, did treat them as his biological sons. The word, loyalty, doesn't work in most places in the One Piece world. But it is vividly reflected in the Whitebeard pirates. But among them, there are always some special beings, such as the very inconspicuous, humble-looking fat man with a few missing teeth sitting in the corner of Moby Dick. Although he was shouting loudly like everyone else, but I was sneering in my heart. People's dreams are endless. Sooner or later, Whitebeard will become a thing of the past, and the new era should be called Marshal D. Teach. Blackbeard looked at the man sitting on the main seat with hidden eyes, and shouted loudly in his heart. His ambition may not be the biggest in the entire One Piece world, but his forbearance is something that almost no one can match. Compared with him. Think about it, in the original work, he was able to hide in the Whitebeard pirates for the sake of an illusory devil fruit. He lived for more than 20 years, acting almost every day, and did not dare to he expressed his inner thoughts and pretended to be another self. Only Blackbeard knew the sadness in this, otherwise he would not have directly killed Sage and established his own business after discovering the dark fruit. At that moment, I have really waited too long, and the ambition that has been hidden is bursting out crazily. However, he is currently just a very ordinary member of the second team. No one will pay attention to him, and no one will think of his various achievements in the future. In fact, if he has shown his talent since joining the Whitebeard pirates, even if he may be a bit cruel, as long as he is recognized by Whitebeard, just like Squidward, even if he stabs his father, it's forgivable. If things really develop like this, Whitebeard helps Blackbeard find the dark fruit. When he grows old, he should do a feat, which is to pass on the power of the shock fruit to the other party. Of course, this everything can only exist in imagination. Blackbeard has already had his own plan. Maybe he also looks down on the captains of the Whitebeard pirates. He feels that these people are not worthy of being his partners. On the other side, in the New World, in an unknown sea area, a huge pirate ship is parked on the shore of an island. If a pirate passes by here, he will probably run away for his life. Because the name of this pirate ship is the Red Foss. The red-haired pirate group carried on it is also very famous now, and it has already shown the attitude of launching a charge towards the position of the fourth emperor. Aha! Aha! At this time, two figures jumped from the Dreyfus to the island. They were not very old, but no one dared to underestimate their current strength. Only one of them was seen, wearing aristocratic clothes. Has short black hair, sharp yellow eyes like an eagle, a short beard, and a cross-shaped knife hanging on his chest, but what he carries behind him is the most precious batch of famous knives in the world, the supreme sharp knife. 12 skills, Black Sword Knight. Just by listening to the name, you know how powerful this sword is. There are only 12 famous swords in the world, and this person actually owns one of them. He is one of the 7 martial arts under the king, Jorakal Mahak, who is known as the world's greatest swordsman, and because his eyes are very special, people call him Eagle Eye. The other person was dressed casually, with a pair of shorts, a shirt, slippers, a cape behind him, and a western sword hanging on his waist. His red hair looked very eye-catching, but the strangest thing was the position of his left arm. Because there was nothing there. This person is Shanks, the captain of the red-haired pirates. He was once a trainee crew member on Gall D. Roger's ship. He has a strong talent. After establishing his own pirate group, he entered the pirate group in just a few years. New World, and created a great reputation. It's just that there is still some distance between becoming an emperor. Mahak, you are such a busy guy. Every time you come to me for a sword fight, why don't you have a nice drink with me? Shanks held the famous sword Griffin at his waist with one hand, with a smile on his face, pretending to be helpless, and said to Hawkeye. In fact, he still likes the opponent in front of him. Every time he competes with Hawkeye, after the fight, the strength will be improved. Although it is not a lot, it can be regarded as an improvement. In the past 2 years, you should have adapted to your right hand, but having said that, what do you think after reading today's news headlines? Hawkeye ignored the redhead's teasing. He said expressionlessly as usual. He may be a facial paralysis, and he always looks cold. Oh, are you talking about the powerful Major General Luo Shu who appeared in the Navy? It is indeed remarkable that at this age he can compete with the leader of the Revolutionary Army fighting alone. Even now, I couldn't do it at that time. Ha 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 ha. After hearing what Hawkeye said, Shanks retracted his hand holding the famous sword, scratched his hair instead, said with a hint of admiration, and finally laughed heartlessly. There was no way, he is like this. In the original work, he would not be angry even if he was ridiculed by a garbage bandit and threw wine in his face. But if he gets angry, most people will not be able to bear his domineering look. Really, I think your arm may have been lost in vain. Although I have never seen the kid you mentioned who looks very similar to Gall D. Roger, he cannot be better than the one in the Navy. Hawkeye shook his head and said, with a trace of regret on his face. He and the red-haired man have been friends for many years, and they are also good opponents. Even if he is inhumane, after reading today's news headlines, he may be more. Perhaps Xiao Xiaoqiu feels a little unworthy of the red hair. Over the years, he has seen countless big scenes and experienced various life and death battles. The title of the world's greatest swordsman is not his own. No matter how young he is, Douglas Barrett and Shaw Crocodile both showed super strength when they were less than 20 years old, but he felt that Luo Shu was much stronger than the two of them, not only in terms of strength. Comparison, as well as personality and style, are incomparable to the former. As the king of the Shichibukai, he naturally knows Luo Shu much better than others. Luo Shu has just become famous and became a colonel at the Navy headquarters. He had paid attention to the other person when he was young. At that time, he always thought in his heart that this young man was very extraordinary and might bring huge turmoil to the world in the future. And today's news headlines further illustrate his suspicion. Accuracy. Ah ha ha ha. Mahak, I've known you for so long, and this is the first time I've discovered that you have so many things on your mind. I've told you before that I bet this arm on the new era. I won't be wrong about that kid Luffy. Shanks suddenly laughed. He was sure of one thing. No matter what others said, it would not change. Moreover, he had strong confidence in himself and believed that Luffy would not let him down. Since you are so confident, let's start this competition. Let me see if your swordsmanship has deteriorated. Clang. Hawkeye asked Shanks to say this. He would not continue to talk nonsense. After all, the purpose of coming to see the opponent this time was to compete with each other. After saying that, he pulled out the supreme sword behind him and pointed at the red-haired man. A huge green slash. It's long overdue. Shanks smiled, held Griffin in his right hand, and took the initiative to meet the slash. On the Red Foss docked at the shore, Ben Beckman, Jesus Bu and others were watching. With relish, they had browsed the news about Luo Shu before, but seeing that their own captain didn't take it seriously, they naturally wouldn't say anything. After all, within a certain period of time, they would not conflict with Luo Shu at all, and even said that it was difficult to even meet. The other two emperors of the New World, Kaido and Charlotte Lingling, did not know who Luo Shu was, because the people under their command simply did not dare to do this because of such boredom. To disturb their two captains. Of these two monsters, one thinks about how to commit suicide every day, maybe for cultivation, or because there is really something wrong with her brain. The other is even more interesting. She stays on Cake Island all day long, she eats all kinds of delicacies day and night, and when she has time, she thinks about which race to have a relationship with, so that she can give birth to powerful offspring and expand her pirate group. Instead, she wastes all her talents. Maybe she is really he didn't care. He had never focused on training, otherwise his strength would never stop there. But there was a person in the New World who had a great headache for Luo Shu, that is, he had only taken over the position of King of Dressrosa a few years ago. Yes, Don Quixote Doflamingo, one of the 7 martial arts under the king. Before he entered the New World, Beihai was his base camp. Among the 4 seas, the business there was the largest under his banner. But now, due to the arrival of Luo Shu, his economic income is plummeting. As the saying goes, cutting off people's money is like killing their parents. If he were an ordinary major general in the navy, he would have sent his men to kill him long ago. But Luo Shu, the difference is not only the importance he receives from the navy, but most importantly, his own strength. Even Doflamingo himself is not confident that he can kill Luo Shu. He has been worrying about this matter recently. Especially after seeing today's news headlines, I became even more angry. Hey, I said, Dover, our Don Quixote family's business in the North Sea is about to close down. There is no pirate group at all now. They are ordering things from me. They are so poor that they are starving to death. In a palace in Dressrosa, Torrebel, who looked like a sloppy uncle, first let out his unique weird laugh, and then complained to Doflamingo sitting on the throne. As Don Quixote, the top leader of the Hode family, he is also one of the few people who can call Doflamingo by his first name. Yes, Dover, we have to do something in advance, otherwise we will only lose more. It's a pity that the Navy kid's strength is a bit beyond imagination, otherwise we could kill him. Diamante on the side rubbed her eyes with red paint, frowned and said to Doflamingo, even though his strength is not very good and he never practices, he still has enough knowledge. He had already heard of a figure like the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and his strength was absolutely astonishing. And if Luo Shu can fight him inextricably, then this matter will be very difficult to handle. Too hard, too soft to have a chance. Who knows what Luo Shu's attitude is towards the king's Chihuahai. Bah, Torbal, move the business in Beihai to the other 3 sea areas. Also, let the people who collect intelligence be smarter. As long as Luo Shu leaves Beihai, we can settle in again. With that monster's strength, I believe that it won't be long before he will be promoted to Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, and then he will be transferred back to Marinavando. After he enters the New World, we have plenty of opportunities to settle the score with him. Even if you can't kill him, you still have to teach the people around him a lesson. Doflamingo, who was lying on the throne, laughed angrily, but he had no other option at the moment. He could only order Torrebel to transfer his business in Beihai. Now that Luo Shu was in the limelight, there was no need for him to be here. Sometimes he would have conflicts with the other party. But as the possessor of overlord color and dominance, he was certainly not an easy man. He decided that when there was an opportunity in the future, he must teach Luo Shu a lesson and let him know that the Don Quixote family is not easy to bully. And the best opportunity is naturally for the other party to enter the New World. This is a paradise for pirates, where a large number of criminals with terrifying strength live. In addition, he has now hooked up with Kaido's beast pirates. Now, isn't it easy to plot against Luo Shu? As for Luo Shu himself, he just woke up from bed. The craziness last night made him feel very comfortable. He still doesn't know his name yet. It has resounded throughout the world and has been remembered by many big shots. Looking at Baccarat, who was lying on the bed, still in a comatose state, Luo Shu shook his head slightly and did not wake him up. Instead, he quickly put on his clothes and opened the door to leave, which also shows that he is not a person who does not know how to cherish the beauty of women. Today's Baccarat is still too young, not very strong, and has an average physique. How can he withstand his tireless onslaught? Sir, this is today's newspaper. Your reputation has shocked the world. Now not only in the North Sea, but also in other sea areas, many civilians are singing your praises. Not long after Luo Shu went out, he saw Derek running up to him with several newspapers and speaking with great respect, with admiration in his eyes. After he got up early in the morning, he and Thor gathered together. When I got this news, I wanted to report it to Luo Shu as soon as possible, but I found that he hadn't gotten up yet, so I could only wait for my parents to go out before telling them these surprises. Oh, these newspapers really know how to talk. However, I think those pirates and revolutionary troops will hate me to death. Luo Shu was stunned for a moment. After taking the newspaper, he read it one by one for a while, and the corners of his mouth gradually turned up. He was sure that many pirates hated him with their teeth. However, he liked to see it. The other party hated him so much that he gritted his teeth, but looked at him helplessly. As long as he thought about it, he would feel very comfortable. However, those words that praised him in the newspaper were regarded as a kind of praise for himself, and he did not take it too seriously. Seriously, it is impossible for him to develop a self-righteous mentality because of this. He understands one thing very well. His current achievements are not enough to be taken seriously by the top powerful people in the world. Congratulations, sir. At this time, Thor, who was wearing a great cloak of justice, also came over and congratulated Luo Shu. You two have time to get close to Yishao. When the revolutionary army invaded yesterday, you also saw his strength. He is also a top powerhouse, but I am not very good at teaching others. If Yishao is willing to teach you too, which is good for improving your strength. Luo Shu looked at the two people standing in front of him and suddenly had an idea. He said meaningfully to Thor and Drake. He didn't lie. His cultivation method was quite special. In addition, Drake also they are taking the swordsmanship route. Although it is not enough to watch now, if they can get guidance from Yishao, the strength of the two of them will improve faster. At most, I can only give them some guidance on domineering, and Yishao's domineering she is even better than him, especially the domineering power that can lock meteorites in space. Even he can only envy him. And the most important thing is to let the two of them establish a good relationship with Yishao in advance. After a long time, there must be a bond between them, which will allow Yishao to get along more harmoniously with his other subordinates when he joins him in the future. Yes, sir. Although the two people did not understand the meaning of Luo Shu's words, they did see a smile. He showed off his power yesterday, and his strength was far beyond the two of them. If they were not ashamed to ask such a strong man, they would still put down their status. Quote. Luo Shu nodded without any extra explanation. In his opinion, it didn't matter whether the two of them knew it or not, as long as they were willing to go. Then he walked to the canteen, first ate and drank by himself, and then carrying a few more nutritious delicacies, he walked towards his residence. Sir, you are back. Are you bringing these for me? At this time, Baccarat had woken up and was tidying up Luo Shu's room with her tired body. However, her face showed a happy smile, especially when she saw Luo Shu carrying a tray of delicious food. She almost cried. She really didn't dare to think that the rear admiral who was extremely domineering and powerful in her eyes could have such a gentle side. Don't wrong yourself in the future, do whatever you want, but don't let your own cultivation fall behind. Luo Shu put the tray on the table, then hugged Baccarat, who was much shorter than him, and whispered to her. In fact, he still had a headache about this matter. He couldn't always, they were all guarding each other. If he accidentally left and allowed the enemy to take advantage of the loophole, it would be more than worth the loss. So he could only tell Baccarat not to slack off in training, even if his lucky fruit was weird, but if all bets are placed on the power of this fruit. If you meet a truly strong person, you will die ugly. Don't worry, sir, I won't let you down. Baccarat closed her eyes slightly and leaned her head against Luo Shu's body, feeling the other person's broad arms. She also held a pair of jade hands tightly, and Luo Shu's hand around his waist. She is enjoying this very much now. She has a warm feeling and is also afraid of being separated from him, so as long as it is a request made by Luo Shu, she will definitely do her best to complete it. This may be love. The two hugged each other like this for a few minutes before slowly separating. Luo Shu sat opposite him and looked at Baccarat, eating the food he brought for him with a smile. His heart was slightly touched. This kind of it feels like he hasn't appeared in a long time. I can't say how much I love Baccarat, but I must like him very much. Not to mention the other party. He can take the initiative to tell stories with him, which shows that he likes him. Less than yourself, there are only two people like this. After being together, there will be various spiritual sublimations. This is the magic of love. Polu, 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 Moses, Moses, I am warring states. At the same time, Marine Fando, who was happily reading newspapers one after another in the marshal's office of the Navy headquarters, suddenly found that the phone number between himself and the 5 old stars, the dedicated line, rang, and he quickly connected it, said in a relatively respectful tone. Even if he is sometimes very angry at what the world government does, in order to fulfill his ambitions, he can't show off to the highest authority in the world government, right? As the saying goes, patience. The situation was calm for a while, and the sky was brighter. He wanted to make more achievements in the position of marshal, so that he could not have a tense relationship with the 5 old stars. Even if he occasionally quarreled with him, he had to be careful not to go too far. That kid Luo Shu is indeed outstanding. He has such strength at a young age. This is not only a blessing for the Navy, but also a good thing for the world government. We learned about what happened yesterday in detail. Warring states, your proposal has been approved. With this credit, there is no problem in promoting him to Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters. However, before that, you inform him to come to the Holy Land and we will talk to him face to face. After all, I haven't seen such an outstanding young man for a long time. On the other side, in a palace located at the top of the Holy Land Marie Joya, there is Wu Laosheng, who is wearing a black suit, has silver curly hair, a flat hat, and a scar on the left side of his face. He is leaning on a cane and has a plain voice, said the phone bug inside. Beside him, several old men sitting in different postures looked at each other and nodded. It was obvious that this idea was discussed by them before they promoted Luo Shu. Before, they met with each other, so that they could get to know Luo Shu better. They not only wanted to see Luo Shu's attitude towards the world government, but also found out what weaknesses the young man had. Only in this way could they help them take control. Okay, I will inform Luo Shu about this as soon as possible. Warring States frowned, said something to the 5 old stars on the other side of the phone, and then hung up. The other party's words reminded him of his past experience. At that time, he was still a lieutenant general at the Navy headquarters. When he was promoted to general, he was also summoned, so he went to the Holy Land Marie Joa and met with the most powerful people in the world government. Many things happened during this period, which made Sengoku, who was in his 30s at the time, almost unable to bear it. He went berserk. If he hadn't had the special gift of super brain, which forced him to suppress the anger in his heart and keep his IQ online, he might not be where he is today. Even now, he can't forget that when he was in the Holy Land, he might have deliberately arranged the scenes he saw. Under the oppression of the Tianlong people, the civilians were no longer human beings. They were no different from animals. They were allowed to be abused and killed at will. At that time, he was the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, but can only stand and watch from a distance, unable to do anything else. Warring States is now a little worried about whether the young and energetic Luo Shu will deliberately let him see this scene when he arrives at the Holy Land Mariajoya. If Luo Shu cannot control the anger in his heart and makes a big fuss in the Holy Land, even if he, the Marshal of the Navy headquarters, comes forward, it will be useless. He will definitely be caught by the strong men hiding in the Holy Land. As for how to judge, he will not qualified to intervene. Although the celestial dragons are hateful, they have stood at the top of power in this world since they were born. They are protected by countless strong people and can do whatever they want. If a naval general dares to attack them, the crime is not small, and he may be directly labeled as a Navy traitor. Polu, Polu, Polu. Even though Warring States was worried, he still picked up the phone number to contact Luo Shu and dialed it. In his opinion, if Luo Shu couldn't even pass this level, how could he become an admiral of the Navy headquarters? In the end, whether you can seize the opportunity or not can only depend on the other party. In this chaotic world without three views, there is no fairness or justice. Anyone who tries to pursue these two things, from history to the present, will not have a good end, no matter how strong or powerful he is. No matter how big it is, there will be no exception. I am Luo Shu. Luo Shu, who had just prepared to practice, heard the phone ringing in his arms and immediately took it out to answer the call. In fact, he had already guessed that warring states would definitely contact him today. Mr. Luo Shu, get ready. You are going to the Holy Land of Mariajoya. The 5 old stars, the highest authority in the world government, are going to meet you. When you arrive, remember that no matter what happens, don't fight there, especially against Tianlong people. Warring states listened to the familiar voice coming from the phone bug. After thinking for a while, he said solemnly, especially the last sentence. His tone was very sharp, as if he was afraid that Luo Shu wouldn't understand. New Marshal of the Warring States period. Luo Shu replied with a calm expression. He had already prepared for this day. In the original book, the celestial dragons were described as having a noble status. They were nothing but scum in every aspect. However, I deeply understand that you can look down on anyone in this world, but you cannot treat the celestial dragons, a clan that claims to be gods, as pig-like existences, otherwise you will suffer a big loss. Although the Straw Hat Pirates, in the incident of fighting the celestial dragons in the original work was left unsolved at the end, but don't forget the protagonist Halo. Luo Shu doesn't think that all celestial dragons are like bears, otherwise why don't anyone dare to attack the Holy Land? In Shangbo Land, why don't the other pirates kill the celestial dragons? Why don't the 4 emperors kill a few celestial dragons to add to the fun? The world government in the more than 800 years since its founding, there has never been a case of a Tianlong being killed. Perhaps there has been such a record in the buried history during this period, but the fate of the perpetrators is definitely terrible. Let me ask, he has been claiming to be a god since he was a child. People who enjoy supreme rights and have a higher chance of awakening the overlord domineering energy are far superior to ordinary people. In addition, they have countless resources and rare devil fruits. If their clan cannot produce a top powerhouse, even if he beat Luo Shu to death, he wouldn't believe it. It seems that those 5 old guys want to find out my bottom. As it happens, I also want to know how deep the water in Mariajoya is. After hanging up the phone, Luo Shu pinched his chin and narrowed his eyes, thinking silently in his heart, if there is the most mysterious place in the world, it must be the Holy Land. What is the final island? Lavroot is simply incomparable to the Holy Land built on the Red Earth continent, and that big treasure is meaningless in Luo Shu's eyes. The Holy Land represents the center of power in this world and is the only one worthy of him. Correct viewpoint. Major General Luo Shu, what's the matter? A few minutes later, Luo Shu came to Yishao's residence and had a casual chat with Yishao. Yishao found that he seemed to be worried, so he asked. I am about to go to the Holy Land of Mariajoya. Several great men want to meet me, but this time I plan to go alone. Because of what I did in the North Sea before, you also know that many pirates hate me to the bone. If they find out that I have left, someone may take advantage of me. Even though Thor and Drake are not weak, they cannot deal with the real strong ones. So, everything is in order. I hope that when I come back, the wounds caused by the previous war will have been repaired and the G20 branch will become more prosperous. After Luo Shu drank all the tea in the cup, he said to Yishao with a serious face. He was not unfounded. Luo Shu, who knew the character of those fools in the sea, felt that if he left, he might really be very revengeful. People come to the G20 branch to cause trouble. It doesn't matter if they are all together, but if they all get together, it will be a big trouble. And if another strong person joins, it is very likely that the G20 branch will be destroyed as soon as he leaves. There will be a catastrophe, and he is not very reassured just relying on Thor and Drake. As for Bakara, his current strength is too ordinary, and it will be almost useless in the face of a real war. So he can only go on. Previously, I had given instructions to Yishao, hoping that it could temporarily take charge of the protection work of the G20 branch and not let anyone with good intentions take advantage of the loopholes. Do not worry, Major General Luo Shu. Unless I die, Otherwise, if those young people dare to come to the G20 branch to cause trouble, I will definitely make them come back. Yi Xiao put down the teacup in his hand, opened his white eyes, and said with a serious face, with incomparable determination in his words. Your words are enough. Luo Shu's face returned to its former calmness. After chatting with Yi Xiao about other things, he found two of his subordinates and told them that during his absence, if there were any problems that could not be solved, they would go find a Smile and explain his and Baccarat's concern. He believes that the two of them know what to do. If there is an emergency, they will definitely protect their women as soon as possible. In fact, Luo Shu could take Baccarat to the Holy Land, but he was just afraid that something bad would happen during the process. After all, there were still a lot of scum among the Tianlong people. In the end, after bidding farewell to Baccarat, Luo Shu, after carefully tidying up, under the watch of Smile, Thor, Drake and a large number of naval forces, they boarded the Rear Admiral-class warship and slowly sailed towards the Holy Land Marie Joa. A few days later, Monkey D. Dragon returned to the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army on the White Earth Island of the Grand Line, Batergo, with several of his subordinates who were favored by Karas during his lifetime. I saw their outfits, either hiding their bodies in coats, or wrapping their faces with something. In short, they didn't look like good people at first glance. In the underground darkroom, around a huge desk, there were several people of different heights sitting. Their identities were Bello Betty, the commander of the Eastern Army, Mori, the commander of the Western Army, and the commander of the Southern Army, Lindbergh, and Bartholomew Bear, one of the king's 7 warlords, and the last person is Terry Gildio, who is in charge of intelligence. Mr. Long. After seeing Meng Chi Di Long come in, several people stood up and greeted him together. Although their revolutionary army had many systems, they were very loyal to the leader Meng Chi Di Long, but the name was not. It's a bit casual. It's not as serious as between pirates or navy. After all, they are shouting fairness and justice, so on the surface, there is no such thing as who is superior to who. Anyway, they are all companions. Terry, tell me what happened recently. Monkey D. Long nodded and sat on the main seat by himself. Then, he said expressionlessly to the intelligence officer of the Revolutionary Army. Others also looked over, even though they knew that many things had happened recently. Things that are unfavorable to the Revolutionary Army, but the leader didn't say anything. It's best for him to shut up first. Ahem. Recently, news from major newspapers around the world have been praising Luo Shu, the Navy's Major General. No, maybe he will be promoted to Lieutenant General soon. He left the Beihai G20 branch a few days ago, and his whereabouts are still unknown. But it should be back to the Navy headquarters, or even to the Holy Land Marie Joa. Our Revolutionary Army is now in a very pessimistic situation. Some civilians in the countries where we usurped power no longer support us. It may be because what happened not long ago has changed their minds, but at present, they are still within control. Secondly, the naval hero Monkey D. Garp returned to Donghai Windmill Village. Although Luo Shu said many unpleasant things during the public execution at that time, fortunately, they were not exaggerated by the newspapers. There may also be the Navy and the world among them. The government intervened, but for the time being, he has taken a back seat and no judge will be reinstated within a certain period of time. Quote. Terry Gildio coughed twice, glanced at everyone, and reported the more important things that happened recently, including the incident about Garp. Maybe he wanted to make Meng Chi Di Long, don't worry about your father. Everyone else was silent. In just a few days, their revolutionary army suffered heavy losses. Not only did they lose a Northern Army commander and an outstanding elite captain, but more importantly, among the civilians they saved, some people support the Navy. Doesn't this mean that everything they have done before has been in vain? Now the world government should be searching for our partners all over the world, hoping to use this incident to give our Revolutionary Army a heavy blow. Pass on the news. The revolutionary troops in other sea areas, try to hide as much as possible first, don't be exposed, wait for the limelight to pass, and make plans. As for the sacrifice of Karas, I am deeply saddened by this. He was an outstanding revolutionary trained by me, but now he took his life because of my carelessness. I will never forget this hatred. Sooner or later, I will take action. Kill that cruel and cold-blooded Navy who was under the banner of justice. There is currently no suitable person elected for the position of commander of the Northern Army. However, I believe that the child brought back from the East China Sea will be able to take over this position soon, but it is still too early. Mengqi Dilong took over the topic with a gloomy expression. Finally, he mentioned Sabo. Yes, he could see the talent that the other party possessed. In a few years, he should be more than enough to take over the position of commander of the Northern Army, but he's just a kid now. Mr. Long, we might as well take advantage of that hateful Navy to leave and teach the Navy G20 branch a painful lesson. This can also be regarded as a breath of evil for the sacrificed Karas, so that he can rest in peace. The only woman present, she is tall, has an extremely loud voice, and has a somewhat heroic temperament. She is Bello Betty, a superhuman inspiring fruit user. Not only is she powerful, her own abilities are also it's strange that civilians who have never practiced can instantly have the strength to defeat elite soldiers. But there is a limitation, that is, the person who can be affected by her ability increase must be much weaker than herself, and even if she is affected by the fruit's ability, the strength will skyrocket due to this, and it will only last for a certain period of time. Otherwise, if the strength of a strong man like Monkey D. Dragon were to increase several times in an instant, then their revolutionary army would have attacked Mary Joa, and who can it be stopped? Yes, Bello's suggestion is very good. We should kill the Navy's majesty to let it know that not everyone can kill the commander of the revolutionary army. The commander of the Western Army, Mori, was also a giant. He had the same idea as Bello Betty, so he also stood up and proposed. You think too simply. Have you forgotten that there is another extremely troublesome person there? The blind warrior Smile, who seriously injured Karas in a few encounters. I once recruited him when I was traveling in Beihai, but was rejected by him. At that time, his strength was on par with mine. Now, if I fight alone, it will be difficult for me to win. Plus, the G20 branch we can't destroy the Navy and Luo Shu's two powerful men in a short time. So now is not the time for us to retaliate against him. As I said before, we should keep a low profile and save our strength. There was a bit of helplessness and anger on Mengqi Dilong's face. He now doubted in his heart, why would a smile help people like Luo Shu who only know fame and fortune? He really couldn't understand this problem. At the same time, these few he always had a feeling that he might never be able to get revenge in this life. Maybe next time he met Luo Shu, the other party's strength would crush him. But in just an instant, he suppressed this thought. To be able to reach this point, he has never lacked self-confidence, let alone inflating the ambitions of others and destroying his own prestige. He believes that as long as the time is right, the world government will be more stupid, causing them to continue to overthrow the regimes of many countries and absorb them. With talented people, the revolutionary army will be able to stand at the top of the world sooner or later. I have to admit that although his idea is good, he has forgotten one thing. The revolutionary army has been established for too short a time and cannot leave too many impressions on the people living in this world. How can it be like the world? The existence of the government and the navy seems so deep-rooted that anyone who catches them will know about it. Finally, Shang, you must try your best to collect intelligence on the navy and the world government, but be sure not to expose it. Finding that everyone was silent, Monkey D. Long turned his attention to Bartholomew Bear, who was sitting there silently with a Bible in his hand, and gave him instructions. If it weren't for the fact that Bear had an undercover mission, he will directly order him to become the commander of the Northern Army of the Revolutionary Army. Regardless of the opponent's strength or brains, he is enough to hold this position. Please rest assured, Mr. Long. Bartholomew Shang has never been a person who talks nonsense. After closing the Bible, he solemnly nodded to Monkey D. Dragon. And this hidden meeting was also declared over at this moment, and everyone said their own opinions. Long said hello and left. They were very busy. Everyone had to deal with many things. After all, holding a high position would not be enough without outstanding ability to do things. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Monkey D. Dragon was the only one left in the entire dark room, sitting there quietly, tapping his fingers on the table. No one knew what he was thinking. Several days later, Luo Shu finally arrived at the Holy Land of Mariajoya. During this period, he only wiped out one pirate group. Because the distance was not very far, he eliminated them all by throwing cannonballs. As for the encounter, the other pirates who arrived started to run away desperately the moment they discovered him. not giving him any chance to take action. Of course, Luo Shu was too lazy to chase him. Otherwise, no matter how fast the opponent's pirate ship drove, how could it be faster than his? As the saying goes, if you haven't flown in the sky, you don't know how high the sky is. If you haven't seen the sea, you don't know how wide it is. Hiss. Although Luo Shu had seen some photos of the Holy Land Mary Joa at the Navy headquarters more than once, when he jumped onto the port and looked at the scene in the distance, he couldn't help but take a breath. The rows of gorgeous buildings, emitting bursts of dazzling light under the sun, actually showed a sense of sacredness, full of inviolability. If Luo Shu were to use a few words to describe Mary Joa, then they would only be luxury, nobility, and finally corruption. I don't know why, but I'm trembling with excitement. Could it be that I was born to like this kind of place? After retracting his gaze, Luo Shu took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Now he even wants to take action to kill the 5 old stars, the Tianlong people, and the mysterious I Am, and control this holy land alone. You must be Major General Luo Shu. I'm Spangdine. Lord Wulaoxing sent me specially to greet you. After a while, a middle-aged man with black hair and an unknown uniform appeared at the port with several CP members who were expressionless and wearing suits and were affiliated with the world government. He greeted Luo Shu with a smile, and there was a bit of respect in his words, without the slightest hint of condescension. He is Spangdine, even though he is over 60 years old now, but because he has always lived and he has a high position and has a lot of supplements to maintain himself. Now he looks similar to Yishao, more like a middle-aged uncle, not that kind of old man. In his position, not many people can catch his eye, except for the Tianlong people. Besides the 5 old stars, there are only a few high-ranking officials in the army and navy, and Luo Shu is considered to have the lowest official position among them, but he does not dare to underestimate the potential of the other party, so he puts his stature very low. He did not show his arrogant energy in the past. The CP9 officer who once presided over the destruction of O'Hara has been famous for a long time. He is worthy of being the pillar of the world government. As the saying goes, don't hit the smiling person, not to mention that Spangdine is so enthusiastic towards him. Of course Luo Shu wants to compliment the other person, and to be honest, he does not hate the other person, even if what he did was to destroy Austria in the first place. One of the important figures in Hara. In his view, those scholars are simply seeking death. Without the strength, they dare to openly defy the regulations of the world government and ignore the warnings. It is impossible for such people to die. Wrong. As for those civilians, they can only be considered unlucky. After all, in this world without fairness and justice, being weak is the original sin. Even if they die, no one will sympathize. Major General Luo Shu is serious. Let's go, Lord Wulaoxing is already waiting. After listening to Luo Shu's words, the smile on Spandane's face became even bigger, but he did not forget the business. After saying a few words modestly, he began to lead the way for Luo Shu. The group of people shuttled through Marigio's house like this. On the street, Luo Shu couldn't help but looked around, but he didn't act like a rustic. His face was still as calm as water, but the waves in his heart were stronger than the others. Hey, Major General Luo Shu, isn't the view of Mary Joa pretty good? Spangdine, who was walking beside Luo Shu, smiled mischievously. His eyes were not poisonous. After seeing Luo Shu's performance, he immediately asked, with a hint of pride, as if showing off something like Luo Shu. I like it here, and if I have the chance, I would like to stay here for the rest of my life. Luo Shu crossed his arms and said seriously, as if he was recounting a fact. Yes, he did not lie, this is what he meant, but there is an extremely important premise, that is, this place the person with the highest authority must be replaced by him. Quote. Spangdine did not answer Luo Shu's words, but put on the uncomfortable smile before. Not everyone is qualified to live in the Holy Land Mary Joa. As a high-ranking member of the world government and a confidant of the 5 old stars, he has to leave here for most of the year. Perhaps he can only become the commander-in-chief of the entire army and be powerful. The captain of the Celestial Dragon Family Guard and the ace under the world government are able to stay here and enjoy happiness most of the time. And how many people can achieve these positions? It can be said to be very few. Ordinary people don't even dare to think about it. Chapter 71. Boom. Ah, you trash. Of what use are you? You are not even qualified to be the slave of this saint. Don't think that you can be freed by dying. Someone come, chop up the body of this garbage and feed it to the wild beasts raised by this saint. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, and at the corner of the street, I saw a man wearing a bubble shield. He was fat and looked wretched. The most disgusting thing was that there was a long snot hanging above his lips, as if he was going to die at any time. A young man who could fall into his mouth. He was pointing at the one he shot to death with a fierce expression. The thin slave yelled, and the other slaves beside him were so frightened that they fell to their knees. He was on the ground, not daring to raise his head for fear of hurting Caillou. Even the few guards in armor who were responsible for protecting him couldn't help but frown, but without saying a word, a person walked out of the queue. He picked up the body and quickly disappeared on the street. Luo Shu, who happened to see this scene, couldn't help but twitch his lips. He was sure that this was specially arranged by Wu Laoxing and others, but he felt that the young man, the celestial dragon, looked familiar. After thinking for a moment, he determined that the other party was Saint Charles, the famous idiot celestial dragon who was beaten up by Luffy in the original work. After knowing the identity of the other party, he couldn't help but I'm going to stay here for a little longer. After all, this Tianlong person's brain is not very good, and he is likely to do something retarded. It will be embarrassing when the time comes, so leaving first is the more correct choice. Hey, has Major General Luo Shu seen the Tianlong people before? Spangdine, who was catching up, couldn't help but ask Luo Shu in a low voice. He had led the way for the three generals before. After seeing this scene, the three people were almost a little angry, especially Ching Pheasant. He almost went berserk. But he has never seen a calm person like Luo Shu, otherwise he wouldn't ask questions about it. You want to say why I didn't show any reaction to the death of that slave, right? First of all, I think this is normal. It is unfair between people. The law of the jungle is the law of the world. Since you are a weak person, you must be prepared to be killed by a strong person at any time. Secondly, that is because he was unlucky and became the slave of the celestial dragon. God wanted him to die, so what chance did he have to survive? Even if I save him, it doesn't make any sense, he will die in the hands of others sooner or later. Luo Shu stopped, turned around, looked directly at Spangdine, and said word by word. He had already thought about these words. In fact, he really doesn't hate the Tianlong people, at most he just hates them. Idiots in this ethnic group. And he also despised those sour dogs in his previous life who attacked the celestial dragons with words. If they were replaced by the identity of the celestial dragons, I am afraid they would do worse than those scum. Excessive, because I envy that kind of power too much, and I can't get it, so I can only stand on the moral side and scold the Tianlong people desperately. Quote. Spangdane opened his mouth, but in the end he didn't say anything. Luo Shu's answer was perfect. First, he did not deliberately support the Tianlong people's actions. Second, the other party did not say anything. The world government is loyal and other high-sounding words. After completing these two factors, the other party also achieved it at the same time, which is what Wu Laoxing most wanted to see. At this moment, Spangdane looked at Luo Shu's back with a bit of admiration. Yes, it was admiration. Even if he was a human being, he couldn't think of changing places with Luo Shu in his heart. So perfect. He had some doubts about how Luo Shu could be so good at this age. If his son Spandam could be half as good as Luo Shu, he would be a big fan. Just like that, 20 minutes later, Spangdine led Luo Shu to the entrance of a small garden, and then gradually stopped. This is Wu Laoxing, a place where you usually enjoy yourself when there is not much official business. Not only are there many precious flowers and plants, but there are also various leisure places. You can experience all the entertainment projects in this world here. And it's the most high-end kind. Major General Luo Shu, I'll go in first and announce it, please wait a moment. Spandam apologized to Luo Shu first, and then quickly walked into the garden. He wanted to tell the 5 old stars about Luo Shu's previous performance. Luo Shu nodded to express his understanding, and he did not do so. No matter how dissatisfied I was, I just admired the surrounding scenery, and at the same time told myself over and over again in my heart that I would occupy Mariajoya no matter what in the future. Lord Wu Laoxing invites you to come in. Be careful not to talk nonsense then. I'll take my leave now. A few minutes later, Spangdine trotted out and said to Luo Shu while wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. Obviously, the weak man would be under great pressure when facing the 5 old stars. Big, that is a kind of physical and mental torture, and it is considered a normal phenomenon. Thank you very much. Luo Shu raised his eyebrows and thanked Spangdine. Then he restrained his aura, including the domineering power of seeing and hearing, and did not activate it. Who knows if there is anything special about the people he is about to face? He had taboos, such as not liking other people prying in a domineering manner. He kept walking forward along a path that seemed to be paved with gems, not forgetting to look around. Until he found that he was sitting at a table. When he saw a few old people drinking tea, his face became solemn, his body stood upright, and he saluted the 5 people with an incomparable standard military salute. These old people in front of him, their whole bodies were filled with powerful auras, is now the 5 old stars, the most powerful person in the world government. Luo Shu, you are very good. You have not disappointed any of us. You are indeed the strongest genius in the history of the Navy. You deserve this title. The 5 old star with the mustache who was closest to Luo Shu put down the teacup in his hand, and after carefully looking at Luo Shu with his eyes, he said with a bit of a smile on his face. Spangdine had already put Luo Shu into it before. His performance told them. I don't know what other people think, but he is quite satisfied with Luo Shu. He thinks that the other person is very valuable to cultivate. This is what I should do. The Revolutionary Army is not only the #1 enemy of the world government, but if it is allowed to develop, even the Navy will become his target for destruction in the end. Luo Shu replied humbly to Wu Laoxing and the others. Those guys are just rats hiding in the darkness. They will only jump out from time to time to make people disgusted, but their threat level cannot be underestimated. After all, there are many civilians living in this world, and they have more or less longed for it in their hearts, fair and just. After being stirred up, it is easy to do hot-headed things. After all, those weak people have poor willpower. However, today we won't talk about the Revolutionary Army. Let's talk about what you think about the current situation of the Navy. Wu Laoxing, who was leaning on a cane and wearing a flat hat, first mocked the Revolutionary Army with disdain, then changed the subject and asked Luo Shu in a deep voice. The Navy is a bit rotten. If we want to really make people in this world remember the Navy again, we must have a major blood change from bottom to top. In addition, there are almost no talented people among the newcomers in the Navy. Most of them are cannon fodder. This is all because, in the eyes of most people, the Navy is incompetent. They would rather pursue that bullshit secret treasure than join the Navy. The reasons why the Navy has deteriorated in their impression are nothing more than 2 points. First, because there are a large number of naval officers who colluded with the pirates and caused trouble for one party, making the civilians under their jurisdiction miserable. Second, the Navy has not done anything major for a long time that is more beneficial to civilians. Every day, the headlines in the news and newspapers are praising a certain pirate, or which pirate's bounty exceeds billions, and which pirate has done something big. If this continues, the civilians have become numb, and they don't think the Navy will play any role. After Luo Shu pretended to think for a while, he began to narrate expressionlessly, telling all the things he was dissatisfied with about the Navy. A very reasonable statement. If the Navy can be recognized by the majority of civilians, the prestige of our world government will also increase, and its control over the entire world will become more compact. That's right. Over the years, the prestige of the world government has continued to decline, and it is not even as good as the Navy. At most, it only serves to make those rebellious people fearful, but it is also labeled as incompetent. This is not what we want to see. The bald 5 old stars and the long-bearded 5 old stars spoke without a word, as if they didn't regard Luo Shu as an outsider, and there was no evasion in their words. As the rulers of the entire world, even if they only understand on the surface, but they have a clear understanding of the situation of their own forces. In addition, according to Luo Shu, they also hope that the Navy will change to bring greater benefits to the world government. Luo Shu, you are indeed smart, which is why we admire you very much. If you were the Marshal of the Navy headquarters, how would you change the current situation of the Navy? Be specific. The golden-haired Wu Laoxing, who had been silent for a long time, had a flash of light in his eyes. After Luo Shu's words just now, he was more interested in him now, so he asked. It's very simple, start from the bottom, let those naval officers who usually collude with pirates restrain themselves, and then, in the Navy headquarters, those naval officers who rely on their seniority and connections to receive high salaries every year, but have no strength at all. Fire the generals, and then weaken the Dove faction navy, that is, the faction navy headed by Garp and Aoki Pheasant. At the same time, support the Hawks of Akainu. The Hawks will then teach the new trainees who join the navy and transmit their ideas to them. If this continues, it will not take long before the navy will be extremely tough and no one will dare to say that the navy is incompetent. At that time, as long as I lead them to capture 1 or 2 emperors, everyone in the world, including officials and kings of those countries, will have a renewed sense of the navy. And the navy has truly become the most powerful weapon under the world government, and can better stabilize this world for the world government. Luo Shu said with confidence. This time he didn't even think about it. He started talking almost as soon as the other party finished speaking. Snapped, snapped, snapped. Well said, Luo Shu, you are a bit young now, but we can assure you that if you do everything you said in the future, you will not stop in the Navy. I believe you should also know that above the Marshal of the Navy headquarters, there is the Commander-in-Chief of the entire army, but this is still not the end. As long as you remain loyal to us, the rights you will obtain will be unimaginable. And before you come, we have decided to promote you to Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters. This is your badge. At the same time, you will be the governor of the North Sea. Since you want to change the Navy, let's start with the North Sea. We are looking forward to it. Your achievements. The blonde 5-old star clapped his hands. After the other 4 5-old stars nodded, he stood up, walked towards Luo Shu, said with a smile, and handed over a badge representing the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, wearing it on Luo Shu's shoulder. They were indeed moved by Luo Shu's words, especially the last sentence. The Navy is a sharp weapon in the hands of their world. The most important thing is that Luo Shu can see through this. As for worrying about his rebellion, the world government has been established for 800 years. Who knows how much power is hidden in it? They are not afraid anyway. Thank you, Lord Wulaoxing. I will definitely do everything I say. Luo Shu looked happy and looked at the badge on his shoulder. He knew that he could go to the system to receive the reward again, but he did not forget to thank him and act like a loyal subordinate. Boy Luo Shu, you don't need to be so serious in front of us, because you are different from other Navy, you are the person we like, and besides, we don't want you to become like them. Otherwise it will only create a gap between us. This may be your first time coming to Mariajoya. Just stay here for 2 days this time and let Spangdine take you to experience the elegance of the Holy Land. The 5-year-old star with the mustache who spoke to Luo Shu first smiled and waved his hand. In this way, Luo Shu left after chatting with several 5-old stars for a while. After all, the 5 people were here every day. I'm relatively busy, so I can't keep arguing with Luo Shu. After leaving the exclusive small garden of Wulaoxing, Luo Shu was taken by a CP under the world government to a building that looked like a villa, but the decoration was very gorgeous. It should be a place where Wulaoxing entertains senior officials from other countries, or the king. Place, because there is a row of the same buildings here, but his knowledge and domineering did not sense the other people. Call. It's really tiring. It feels really uncomfortable to be stared at by these 5 people. However, that bald old star, like Zoro, can control ghost energy, and has reached the top level of 2-color hockey. Coupled with advanced physical skills and the swordsmanship of a high-level swordsman, it is not surprising that the overall strength is judged to be SSS plus very normal. After he randomly entered a room, Luo Shu took a deep breath and thought secretly in his heart. Except for the bald 5-old stars, the strength of the other 5-old stars was generally SSS. Although he had already guessed that doing as the most powerful person in the world government, it is impossible not to have strength at his side, but should be very strong. But when he actually saw this scene, he couldn't help but feel that the world government is really powerful. If all its hidden powers were gathered together, get up and you can definitely conquer the world. System. I want to receive the reward. After pondering for a long time, Luo Shu communicated with the system. He wanted to see what kind of reward he would get when he was promoted to Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Ding. Congratulations to the host for getting a Domineering Improvement card. This card can increase the host's Domineering, Armed Domineering, and Knowledge Domineering by 1 level without any side effects. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting a Physical Skill Improvement card. This card can increase the host's physical skill level by 1 level without any side effects. The rewards this time are not talents, but these 2 improvement cards are very practical. For me, they can quickly improve my strength. Use it now. Improve your dominance and physical skills. Looking at the reward given to him by the system, Luo Shu was stunned for a moment. After sighing a little in his heart, he immediately ordered the system to use these 2 cards without hesitation. That's right, he finally chose to increase the domineering color of the Overlord. First of all, his armed color hockey has improved a lot after the battle with the dragon. He feels that he will be able to break through in a short time. The same goes for the knowledge and color hockey. With the blessing of the Thunder Fruit, it is not easy to break through to the top level. It would waste too much energy. In order to dominate the king's domineering energy, although his current state of mind and courage are far better than those of his previous life, there is still a big gap compared with the real strong men in this world. In addition, he is in the Navy camp. Currently, the restrictions are not small. He cannot do things unscrupulously. As well as his character of retribution, it is extremely difficult to improve the domineering look of the king. Until now, he has been confused about the original Qi Dilong, displaying his overlord color and domineering spirit, instantly disintegrated his arrangement in the Navy G20 branch. If it were not for the help of Yishao, he would really be in danger that day. So Luo Shu increased his overlord color and domineering spirit this time, so the benefits it brings to him can be imagined, and it is the most correct choice. Of course, he thinks so. After all, he doesn't know whether he will be rewarded with this kind of promotion card in the future, and he doesn't want to waste it in vain. He doesn't. If he is willing to be overbearing and domineering, he will always stop at the intermediate level. This is really embarrassing and seriously affects his identity as a time traveler. This is the power of the world's top experts. The system opens my panel. Ding! The panel is opening. Host: Luo Shu. Special talents: copper skin and iron bones, super divine power, natural overlord, opposite gender physique. Domineering: advanced overlord color, advanced armed color, advanced knowledge color. Physical skills: top, sword skills, uninitiated, ability, natural system, thunder fruit. Comprehensive strength, SSS+. Now, if I meet Monkey D. Dragon again and challenge him in a duel, I should be able to defeat him, but it is impossible to kill him. Unless he doesn't run away even if he dies. Looking at his own panel, Luo Shu murmured in a low voice that now his physical skills have been upgraded to the top level. The physical skills he developed before have also been strengthened, and the attacks he can unleash are stronger than before. In order to be terrifying, his comprehensive strength reached SSS+ in one fell swoop, which is the representative of the top strength in the world as analyzed by the system. But at a level, there are also strengths and weaknesses. In addition, the state and mood when fighting the enemy will affect the final result. Therefore, the analysis of comprehensive strength cannot be taken too seriously. I have never seen him in SSS. When can it be on par with Monkey D. Dragon? In that battle, the opponent didn't give in at all. The two of them were also full of firepower. However, due to Luo Shu's special talent and the ability of the Thunder Fruit, he was overwhelmed in terms of domineering and physical skills, can still cope with the opponent's attack. This time, my military rank was not only promoted to Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters, but I also served as Governor of the North Sea. It seemed that I was destined to be a hero of the North Sea. Those fools, if they knew about my appointment, they would probably flee Beihai, right? Or fight to the death with me. Things are getting really interesting. After feeling the improved strength for a while, Luo Shu suddenly thought of those pirates in Beihai who hated him to the core, and Germa 66 who dared to cause trouble in his territory when he just took office as the top officer of the G20 branch. He decided that when he went back, he must take care of these people, otherwise they would not know why the flowers were so red. Buckle, buckle, come in. Congratulations to Rear Admiral Luo Shu for being promoted to Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters. I believe that in a few years, you will be promoted to the rank of Admiral of the Navy headquarters. After a while, When Luo Shu was about to rest, there was a knock on the door. The person who came was none other than Spangdien. After he came in, he was stunned for a moment, and then congratulated Luo Shu with a smile on his face. Ichiban. Yes, although he is not strong, it does not mean that he has no eyesight. For some reason, he feels that the aura that Luo Shu exudes from time to time is more unfathomable than when he saw it before. He has some doubts in his heart. Could it be that Luo Shu, did you deliberately hide your strength at the beginning? Or did you make a breakthrough in this short period of time? Do you have to be such a genius? It's getting dark. Why are you here? Luo Shu leaned back on the sofa and glanced at Spangdien standing in front of him. He felt that besides congratulating him on his promotion, he had other purposes, so he simply asked directly. Forehead. He, there is indeed something going on, but it is a great thing. A big shot living in Pangu City is very interested in you, so he sent me to pick you up. Spangdien smiled awkwardly at first, then his expression was extremely exaggerated, and he even started dancing, as if telling Luo Shu that you are in luck this time. The big shot you're talking about should be a celestial dragon, right? Sorry, I don't really want to meet the celestial dragons. Luo Shu frowned slightly and refused without thinking. If the big shot mentioned by the other party was a celestial dragon like Saint Charos, it would be impossible for him to meet him, otherwise something would definitely happen. Lieutenant General Luo Shu, this big shot is no ordinary celestial dragon. Her family is one of the top 3 in the celestial dragon clan. And she is also very powerful. You'd better meet her. Hearing Luo Shu's refusal, Spangdien seemed to be prepared in advance. Not only did he not get angry or show any other strange expression, but he explained patiently to him. And the celestial dragon he was talking about was actually a female celestial dragon. Oh, you lead the way. Luo Shu became a little curious and decided to meet the celestial dragon. It's not that he made this choice because the other party was a woman. It was because he heard about the other party's family and the story of this female celestial dragon. The strength is very strong. In this case, the other party is definitely not an idiot, and the chance of conflict between him and the other party will be greatly reduced. So what reason does he have to reject the other party's kindness? Ha ha, good, let's set off now. Spangdien smiled and nodded, and he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. If Luo Shu insisted not to go, it would be really difficult for him to do it. At that time, he might suffer because of not completing the order given by that person. If he was punished, he would be so unlucky. So he took Luo Shu and walked quickly towards Pangu City. During this period, Luo Shu saw a large number of guard soldiers. He felt that the strength of these people was stronger than the elites of the navy. They were out a lot, even though it was already night, but there was no trace of exhaustion on their faces, and everyone was on full alert. When he was watching anime in his previous life, he was so excited about Fisher Tiger climbing onto the red soil mainland and released the slaves of the celestial dragons. In the end, he was still puzzled by the fact that he had not died in the Holy Land. Seeing such a situation now, Luo Shu was sure that the incident at the beginning was not as simple as he imagined. Maybe it was several big figures among the celestial dragons have discussed with the world government in advance, just to teach those low-level celestial dragons some lessons, so that they can grow a little bit through this incident, and don't just want to live and die in drunkenness every day without making the slightest move. Work hard. Otherwise, with the security measures of Holy Land Marie Joa, none of the freed slaves and Fisher Tiger can leave alive. Lieutenant General Luo Shu, we are here. I'm waiting for you at the door. After entering Pangu City, they turned left and right, and the two finally came to a huge palace. At the same time, Spangdien turned around and said to Luo Shu. The meaning was obvious. He was not qualified to enter. Mainly, it was also because the Tianlong man he was talking about did not invite him. Good. Luo Shu didn't talk nonsense. After nodding to Spangdien, he started to walk forward. Looking around at the golden walls and white jade pillars inlaid with various gems, he had to admit that the Tianlong people were really of money. Are you the Vice Admiral Luo Shu of the Navy headquarters? My name is Lekka, please follow me. Not long after Luo Shu entered the palace, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him, and said in an emotionless voice. He was more than 3 meters tall and was wearing a black uniform. The muscles on his body are vividly displayed, and he walks with the stride of a dragon and a tiger. You can tell at a glance that the opponent's physical skills are very strong. With the strength of SSS, this should be the strong man responsible for protecting the Tianlong people, right? It can also be called a shield. Luo Shu followed the opponent silently, but through the system's function, he checked the panel named Lekka and found that its overall strength score was SSS, and the opponent was also an ancient devil fruit user with very good physical skills. Powerful, it can be seen that the Tianlong family can cultivate such a strong person. The strongest genius in the history of the Navy, you are indeed worthy of this title. It is amazing that you can become a Vice Admiral of the Navy at the age of only 17. You can call me Clarina, a Draco. After a few minutes, Lekka took Luo Shu into an inner hall, turned around and left without saying a word, and then, a very pleasant voice sounded. A woman sitting on a chair made of white jade is leaning on her chin, looking at Luo Shu, who is standing below with her extremely stunning eyes. This woman is wearing a fiery red tight dress, which clearly shows off her curvy figure, and her exposed skin. She is extremely fair, with a sense of ice-like flesh and jade bones. Her long golden hair is scattered casually. Her face is extremely delicate, as if she is like a goddess from the 9 heavens descending to earth. Her whole body exudes an unusually noble aura. Any word that praises beauty can be used. There is nothing wrong with her. Open the other party's panel. Ding. The panel is opening. Name: Karen Clarina. Special talents: natural dominance, top agility, top brute strength. Dominance: advanced overlord color, advanced armed color, advanced knowledge color. Physical skills: advanced. Sword skills: not yet started. Ability: none. Comprehensive strength: SSS. Your talent ranks among the top among the Celestial Dragon clan. Besides, you are not very old, and your strength is stronger than that Lekka just now. Luo Shu suppressed the heat in his heart and forced himself to calm down. After taking a look at Clarina's panel, he said in a light voice. Clarina's talent is comparable to that of Tautu, who is the backup to the general. She is much stronger, and her strength is naturally higher than the former, but for Luo Shu, the other person is too tempting. He has never seen Boya Hancock, who is known as the most beautiful woman in the world. But he has seen the reward list. From his aesthetic point of view, the appearance of the female celestial dragon in front of him is no worse than that of the Empress. And because he had not long experienced the joy of being a man at Baccarat's place, he was feeling a little intoxicated. Now he saw the beautiful, powerful, noble, and inviolable female Tianlong in front of him. The queen actually had the desire to possess the other person. And this idea was expanding rapidly after it appeared. He was afraid that he would be unable to control it and rush forward, but fortunately, his willpower was strong enough. As long as the other party did not do anything extreme, I won't turn into a werewolf. Hee, shouldn't you be curious? In your eyes, aren't we Tianlong people extremely miserable beings? Being reduced to a useless race without a world government, without the protection of the navy and other forces. Clarina stood up from her seat and said with a bit of self-deprecation, but there was no anger at all on her face, because in her heart, people who have such thoughts are those who cannot be put on the stage. Trash, this life is destined to be mediocre. Until the day you die, you will not bring any shock to the world. I am not one of those people you are talking about. If the celestial dragons are all useless trash, how can they be gods in this world for 800 years? Luo Shu shook his head, looked directly into Clarina's eyes, and spoke word by word. His voice was very firm and did not allow others to question it. You understand quite well. It is said that geniuses are different from other people, whether it is thought or will. Even though those people talked about how they were tarnishing the Celestial Dragon clan in their hearts, when they saw us, they didn't kneel on the ground with a look of fear on their faces. It was really hilarious. Lieutenant General Luo Shu, if you had the opportunity to become a Tianlong, would you be willing? Clarina walked slowly to Luo Shu. She was nearly 2 meters tall and was only a head shorter than Luo Shu. But when she said what she said, she gave people a domineering feeling. Combined with her innate temperament, she really looks like a god. Clarina Palace. Are you kidding me? Luo Shu finally couldn't control the surprise in his heart. The voice in his mouth immediately rose an octave, and even the title changed. Becoming a Tianlong. If he got this identity after traveling through time, then he might be. I want to laugh so hard that my whole body cramps. But if I don't have it, how can I become a celestial dragon with the bloodline called the Creator? Even if I use some special methods, such as getting married, I can be naturally accepted by other celestial dragons. Luo Shu is not that naive. The people of that clan can be said to be inhumane. They will have aversion to ordinary people, even strong men. Even the celestial dragons like Charos have never been treat races other than the celestial dragons as human beings, and there are many celestial dragons with such thoughts. From the current point of view, you really have no chance to become a celestial dragon. Even if you marry me and become my husband, you will not be accepted by those celestial dragons. But what if those trash are dead, or they are no longer Draco? In this case, who would refuse a strong man like you to become a member of this clan? Clarina seemed not to have heard Luo Shu's exclamation. She was still talking freely about her words, but her words contained a hint of longing to realize what she wanted in her heart. We will stop updating novels on this site, move to our new site, Web Links. As a celestial dragon, of course she hopes that there will be no rubbish in her noble clan, but that everyone will be as strong as she is. Only in this way can the Tianlong clan continue to prosper. And the rubbish that affects this clan, nature also needs to be eliminated. Although this idea sounds reasonable, it is a bit unrealistic. Call. I heard nothing. If there is nothing else at Clarina Palace, I will leave first. Luo Shu took a deep breath. Only then did he realize how dangerous the woman in front of him was, especially the other party's ideas, which can be described as extreme. If he stayed here, something would go wrong, so he decided it's better to retreat first, and you can't have anything to do with the woman in front of you in the future. Luo Shu, you possess a very high level of domineering power. I don't believe in your ambition to be an ordinary Navy officer. Although you can become an admiral of the Navy headquarters in the future, let me tell you. If you leave like this today, you will only be a general in the future. Even if you take over the position of marshal in the Warring States period, don't even think about it. In fact, many years ago, some of the more powerful families among the celestial dragons no longer allowed their main members to marry other celestial dragons who had no strength. However, after all, there are very few strong people in the celestial dragon clan, so most of them chosen, those ordinary people with strong talents. Although the selected people will not become celestial dragons, the children they give birth to will be absorbed into the celestial dragon clan. I think back then, 20 kings jointly created the world government, ruled the world with overwhelming power, and even named their descendants as a clan of gods, called celestial dragons. This was such an unparalleled achievement, but now because of those garbage too much, causing the power of this clan itself to become worse and worse. If this continues, even if they are still Tianlong people, they have lost the power they should have. At this moment, Clarina's face was full of madness. It turned out that her dream was to become as great a person as the 20 kings. As long as the Tianlong clan is reformed, if it succeeds, this person in the future will the strong ones in the race will also remember her as a great benefactor. In this way, even if she does not rule the world, her reputation in the new Tianlong clan is no less than that of any of the 20 kings. What does this have to do with me? I am not a celestial dragon, and I am not interested in the affairs of your clan. Luo Shu took a few steps outside and stopped. If the opponent was not a celestial dragon, if this was not the Holy Land Marie Joa, even if the opponent had the strength of the SSS, Luo Shu would kill him. Because Luo Shu he hates people threatening him the most. But now he is no longer tempted by the other party, and he no longer wants to have anything to do with him. His voice when speaking also seems colder, without any emotion mixed in it, but it is somewhat similar to the previous Lekka. The weak and arrogant Tianlong people are not worthy of this sacred blood. If you are willing to help me clean up the garbage, then when the incident is over, I will marry you. By then, everyone who blocked the road will be dead. Who else will what can stop you from becoming a celestial dragon? Clarina didn't mind Luo Shu's performance at all. She came to Luo Shu again, stretched out her weak and boneless white jade hands, and gently touched Luo Shu's handsome face. At the same time, she used her incomparable the soft voice said, no longer as crazy as before. The reason why she did this was because she took a fancy to Luo Shu's talent and strength. She knew that her plan, or dream, could not be realized based on personal ability alone, and she had to find helpers. And Luo Shu is the most suitable person she has met in all these years. First of all, he is powerful and greedy for power. Secondly, if she is taken seriously in the Navy, she will definitely take charge of power in the future. If she can have such a person to help her, her chances of success will be greatly improved. Do you know that your idea is very dangerous? If you are not careful, you will die. Your family, including you, will be the target of public criticism because of you. By then, your identity will be useless and you will no longer be able to play any role. Umbrella effect. Having said that, Wu Laoxing and the others should also be members of the Celestial Dragon clan, and they each have their own families. Their descendants may not be idiots, but if you want to kill those losers or deprive them of their Celestial Dragon status, they will definitely be punished. Yes, after all, other people's ideas cannot be as extreme as yours. At that time, what you will face will be the world due to the attacks from the government and other Tianlong families. Even if your family is relatively high among the Tianlong family, you will only die without a burial place. Although Clarina's idea is very close to his ultimate goal, it would be a good thing if he can cooperate with such a Tianlong, but Luo Shu is not ready to agree to the other party prematurely. After all, he doesn't understand the situation in front of him very well yet. People, if something suddenly goes wrong on the other side when making a plan, wouldn't he have to be exposed in advance? He never fights uncertain battles, and he doesn't want his years of hard work to be wasted because of other people's reasons. Go east. If civilians want to get a good harvest, they have to work hard, but if they want to gain supreme authority, advancing from ordinary people to celestial dragons, even if it is described as changing one's fate against the will of heaven, it is not an exaggeration. How could there be no risk? As for the powerful enemies that want to block the way, you and I just need to work together to eradicate them. No matter what his identity is, even if the power in our hands is severely damaged by this, it will be easy to recover as long as we spend some time and use huge resources, right? Clarina seemed to recognize Luo Shu, and she intended to cooperate with her in her words, but she was a little worried, so she explained. I suspect that even you may not know some secrets. Why not wait until you become the patriarch of your family and come talk to me about today's matter? Luo Shu looked at Clarina's peerless appearance carefully, and he said to her seriously. He didn't mean to be perfunctory, because he thought that Clarina might not even know I am, which is normal. Even though Clarina is an important member of the top Draco family, she may not have access to such secrets, not to mention that there is a high chance that the most powerful ancient weapon, the King of Heaven, is somewhere in Mariajoya, Uranos. Even Pluto's battleship, which is one level below him, is rumored to be able to sink an island with one shot. So what kind of power can the Uranus unleash? Perhaps only Clarina's father can, even the patriarch of the Cullen family knows. But Luo Shu is not sure about this either. The King of Heaven is much more mysterious than Imlai. There is only a few sentences mentioned in the original work. Even I don't know Shin Mi, it's interesting. But you are right, there may be certain things that only those who are in charge have the right to know, so we hereby agree that when I become the head of the Cullen family, it will be time for you and me to cooperate. After thinking about it for a while, Clarina agreed with Luo Shu's words. She was not a fool, but very smart. She understood the meaning of the other party's words immediately, so as she spoke, she raised her right hand and made an important gesture. High-fiving Luo Shu and swearing an oath of alliance. Snapped. Then you have to hurry up, because it won't be long before I become the admiral of the Navy headquarters. As for the position of marshal, I am bound to get it. Luo Shu did not hesitate. He stretched out his right hand and collided with his left hand. After making a crisp sound, he did not forget to tell the other party. Within 5 years, I will be able to achieve the position of clan leader. At that time, I will take over all the power of the Karen family. There are 2 strong men like Lekka in our family. The other 2 top families only have 1 person. But the level may be higher. Never mind, let's not mention these things for now. It's getting late. You can go back. This is the phone bug that contacts me through my dedicated line. It has the function of preventing others from eavesdropping. If you need any help, you can use it to contact me. Clarina took back her left hand, took out a red phone bug, and handed it to Luo Shu. Since the 2 parties had made an agreement, they naturally had to leave their contact information. This would also help to pass information between the 2. Luo Shu took the phone and put it in his arms without looking at it. Then, he turned around and walked out of the palace. This trip to Pangu City was a huge gain for him. He was able to meet the top of the Tianlong people at close range. The meeting between powerful men confirmed his previous suspicions in his mind. First of all, the heavenly dragons are divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels. As long as the higher-level heavenly dragon families have a shield, the family patriarch, or its main, the members all have great talents. Even if they are not as good as Clarina, their strength is certainly not weak. In this case, everything makes sense. Why have there been no powerful pirates or forces capable of conquering the Holy Land in these years? Legend. There may be such a lawless existence in history, but he died miserably, and it has not been revealed. The Holy Land of Mariajoya, where so many powerful people gather, is simply a piece of iron. Even if it is called unkillable, Kaido doesn't dare to come here to act recklessly. Otherwise, his talent of immortality is likely to malfunction. What an interesting man. I hope I can actually accomplish that goal in the future. Looking at Luo Shu's leaving figure, Clarina clenched her pink fists and thought secretly in her heart. She didn't know yet that her idea was actually playing into Luo Shu's hands, because the other party wanted to eradicate the world government, pull the Tianlong clan down from the altar, and then took over the position of the world's most powerful person. Of course, even if she knew what Luo Shu was thinking, she would not hesitate to choose to cooperate with the other party. In her opinion, in that case, she would just become Luo Shu's woman in the end and build a family with the other party. Wouldn't it be different? A clan of gods. And with the talents of the two of them, the offspring they give birth to will never be waste. As time goes by, this race will surpass the previous celestial dragon race, and her status will also rise. Why not? Why? Outside the palace, Luo Shu, led by Spangdine, quickly left Pangu City and walked towards his previous residence. The news here also reached the ears of the 5 Elder Stars, the highest authority in the world government, at the first time. However, they did not take it seriously. They only thought that Clarina saw Luo Shu's talent and strength and sent him a solicitation. As for whether the latter agreed or not, they did not care, even if he became a celestial dragon. Although he has obtained a shield, this does not prevent him from working for their world government. On the contrary, his relationship with them is one step closer. That navy has already left. Can't we still capture a mere G20 branch? Rush them all to me. Whoever dares to take a step back, don't blame me for turning against you. Hateful. How could that rear admiral of the navy branch named Thor and Drake be so powerful? I am a big pirate with a bounty of 150 million. No matter how hard we fight with them, if this continues, we will have no way to survive. The worst is to die, but even so, their navy must pay the price. No matter what today, we must capture the G20 branch. We are powerful pirates, how can we be suppressed by these incompetent navies? Quote. Around the Beihai G20 branch, there are dozens of pirate ships that have been baptized by shells. At this time, there are more than 2,000 ferocious pirates in the port. Under the leadership of their own captain, they are fighting with Lai Chang. The navy in the formation fought hard, and they kept cheering for themselves and others. But most of the corpses lying on the ground were pirates, and the navy was full of fighting spirit. This was all thanks to the 2 figures rushing at the front, which were Drake in the form of an Allosaurus, and Thor in the form of crocodile. I saw that wherever the 2 of them passed, a large number of pirates would be knocked away or cut into pieces. In short, the scene was extremely bloody, and their defense was extremely high. When they withstood the hail of bullets and slashes with swords, they would not be able to do anything at all. It was unable to cause any injuries to the 2 of them. But because these pirates were oppressed to the limit, despite seeing such a scene, few of them retreated, as if they had been brainwashed, and they all pretended to fight to the death with the navy. Major General Luo Shu is so lucky to have these 2 men with great potential. In a building in the distance, Yi Xiao used his own domineering knowledge to perceive the scene at the port clearly. Even he was extremely optimistic about Thor and Drake, thinking that they would definitely follow Luo Shu in the future. A lot of achievements can be achieved. Standing behind him was Bakala, who looked much more mature than before. She had not yet mastered the armed hockey. She had only learned the 6th form of the navy. Coupled with her current status, she naturally did not need to use it. Participated in the war. Otherwise, if a bullet hits a vital part and dies as a result, how will I explain to Luo Shu when he comes back? Are you afraid that all three of them will have to die to apologize? There is even a little bug. Miss Baccarat, please wait here while I go deal with a pirate. Suddenly, Yi Xiao's brows raised unnaturally. He actually discovered that there was a person in the sky observing the battlefield, and he also had the idea of a sneak attack, so he turned around and said to Baccarat, "Do not worry, Mr. Yi Xiao, I won't wander around." Baccarat replied with a smile on her face. She still respects Yi Xiao because she knows that her man intends to recruit him, and she can never do anything that makes people dissatisfied. Whoosh, Yi Xiao nodded, used his various fruit abilities, and his body suddenly flew up. He quickly rushed towards a cloth-like figure floating in the sky in the distance. How could that navy brat have such strong subordinates? Dover said that if there is a chance, he will attack the opponent secretly. If not, leave quickly. It seems like I can go. The piece of cloth-like object floating in the air turned out to be one of the 7 warlords under the king, Doflamingo's top official, the superhuman flying fruit ability user Diamante, who was originally going to be sent to Beihai. Torbal, however, received the news that Luo Shu had left the G20 branch before setting off, so the plan changed. Doflamingo sent Diamante, who can float in the sky and is easier to escape at critical moments, to the North Sea to direct the relocation of his businesses, and to find opportunities to contact the pirates who resent Luo Shu and bring them together, launched an attack on the G20 branch. And he did not forget to tell Diamante not to expose himself and try to hide behind the scenes. If these pirates can defeat the navy of the G20 branch, then they can find an opportunity to sneak attack on Luo Shu's 2 subordinates. If you can't win, there's no need to force it, just go back to the New World. Isn't it too late for me to leave now? Who gave you the courage to want to sneak attack on the 2 major generals of my G20 branch? Although your ability is very special, you should stay with me today. Gravity Knife Tiger. Just when Diamante was about to retreat, a voice rang in his ears. It turned out that Yi Xiao had appeared not far behind him, and holding a staff and knife in both hands, he waved a purple streak, like a tiger. The huge slash tore the atmosphere in front to pieces. Carrying the boundless aura of destruction, he attacked Diamante. Since the last time, due to his own problems, he had a battle with Karas, the commander of the Northern Army of the Revolutionary Army, and almost led to after the catastrophe, he made a vow in his heart that no matter what kind of enemy he faced in the future, he would attack with all his strength from the beginning and not give the opponent any chance to breathe. The blind man didn't leave. Phew, facing Yi Xiao's full blow, Diamante didn't even have a chance to use his moves before he was cut in half. Before he died, there was only one thought left in his mind, that is, he was so unlucky. Look at the sky, it's the blind man. At the port of the G20 branch, the 2 parties were fighting in the dark, but just after Diamante was killed with a smile, the pirates didn't know who it was, and their eyes were very poisonous. He was killed by a navy man again. After being knocked down, he discovered the existence of Yi Xiao. He almost exhausted all the strength in his body and shouted to his companions around him. Wow, brothers, run away. That guy didn't leave the G20 branch. Don't stop me, I must escape. We have already lost this battle. Even if we swarm you, we are no match for that monster. Even Karas, the commander of the Northern Army of the Revolutionary Army, is no match for him. If we don't escape, we will have no chance. Even the captain is not enough to kill him with one strike. I'm not willing to give in. The navy has left here, but there is still a monster. Even if we leave, we can no longer survive in the North Sea. Even Doflamingo's top official, Diamante, was instantly killed by that blind man. There is no possibility for us to win. Let's run away together. Quote. Although this voice seemed very small on the battlefield, when it was passed from 1 to 10, 10 to 100, in just an instant, 80% of the pirates noticed the smile standing in the air, and their faces became frightened. Uneasy, a desperate cry came out of his mouth. The original mentality of not being afraid of death also changed. They dropped their weapons and quickly ran towards the pirate ship behind them. After all, Yi Xiao is so powerful that most of these pirates can clearly see it from the big screen. Although the newspapers did not mention Yi Xiao much about the war that happened not long ago, people living in Beihai, especially the pirates, of course, remembered the blind man who was holding a staff and sword and whose strength was terrifying. If they fight with these Navy and fail and die, they can still accept it. But when this monster appears and they say that they and others are still here, isn't that the same as sending death? Even those pirate captains who have not yet fallen, immediately organize their pirates to evacuate here quickly. Before, they thought of taking a gamble, but now they just want to survive. Chase. Don't let these fools get away. Kill them all. They finally got together and caught them all at once. In this way, the number of pirates in the North Sea will be reduced a lot. Those pirate groups who were not involved in this matter will also cower in fear. Seeing the pirates evacuate, the Navy soldiers were still a little confused, but Drake and Thor reacted quickly. They took the lead and rushed to the front of the Navy, attacking the fleeing pirates, while giving orders to the Navy behind him. For justice, kill all these pirates. How dare you come to sneak attack while our highest officer is leaving? You deserve to die. This rabble has actually done some shady things. If they dare to come to our G20 branch to take advantage of us, they will never come back. With Major General Drake and Major General Thor here, we won't lose at all. Catch up with those pirates. Quote. After hearing the words of Thor and Drake, a large number of Marines immediately raised their arms and shouted, with crazy faces, and rushed towards the pirates. At this moment, they were as if they had been given a shot of blood, and they were tireless. After another 10 minutes, only a few hundred of the more than 2,000 pirates jumped onto the pirate ship. They all looked like they were surviving the disaster. Looking at the corpses of their companions on the shore, they were filled with grief. Stop shooting. Leave those people to me. If I let them leave so easily, wouldn't I have fulfilled my promise to that man? Gravity ray meteorite falling from the sky. Yi Xiao came to the Navy. He first stopped the Navy soldiers from shooting in turn. At the same time, he sensed the movement trajectories of the pirate ships. Then, he suddenly twitched his staff and ejected a purple ripple. The shock wave disappeared into the sky in the blink of an eye. Ha 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 ha. Finally survived. It doesn't matter how strong the blind man is. When I recover from my injuries, I must kill more civilians to celebrate. That's right, let's destroy a few small towns to vent our anger. This is a great idea. There are so many pirates in our group. How can they be busy by then? As long as we split up and act separately, there is no way the Navy will have free manpower to hunt us down. It would be great if I could be as powerful as the leader of the Revolutionary Army. I will definitely kill that Luo Shu and all the civilians in the sea areas under his jurisdiction. Then crush his men to death one by one in front of him. Quote. The Navy standing at the port didn't understand what Yi Xiao was doing, but they all stayed there honestly and did not ask questions, including Drake and Thor, but they had already moved the pirate ship. The pirates who started the car and drove towards the distance let out harsh taunting sounds, which seemed to be like a villain's success. There was nothing they could do about it. They were weak to begin with. After escaping from the strong, they inevitably felt an indescribable sense of accomplishment and even forgot their last name. He seems to regard himself as a big pirate in a famous town. There are even a few idiots among them who actually want to wait until this matter is over and then go and kill civilians to celebrate. I have to admit that the brain circuits of these idiots are really weird. Boom, boom. At this moment, the originally dark sky suddenly turned fiery red. Two meteorites with very large diameters, entwined with raging fire, cut through the clouds and were falling downwards at a very fast speed. This made the Navy who discovered the situation first opened their mouths. If they couldn't guess that this was the ability of Yi Xiao, wouldn't that be a retard? Quote. Boom. Wow. On the other side, when the pirates discovered the scene above their heads, they all stood there in shock, unable to say anything, and no one jumped off the ship to escape. They swore that they had never seen such a thing in their lives. Especially that the area of the two meteorites was very wide. The moment they fell, several pirate ships were directly smashed into pieces. As for the pirates on the ship, no one was spared. The surrounding sea surface set off large waves of more than 100 meters, and almost minutes later, everything returned to calm. The pirates who attacked the G20 branch this time all died here. All right, the rest is up to you. Feeling that the sailors were looking at him with admiration, there was a little pride on their smiling faces. After all, no one didn't want to be recognized, even the strong ones. Then, He dropped a sentence and said he quickly disappeared at the port. Early the next morning, Luo Shu received a report from Bakara. In the past, it would have been one of Drake or Thor. However, due to the public relationship between Bakara and Luo Shu, naturally, this kind of thing has to be conveyed to the other party. However, Luo Shu knew that all the pirates who attacked the G20 branch this time were wiped out, leaving no one alive, and Doflamingo also contributed to this matter. In the end, he was not surprised, because when he left, he had guessed the thoughts of those mischievous people. And as he was familiar with the original work, he naturally understood why Doflamingo would trouble him. It must be because Beihai was under his management. It has seriously affected the other party's underground business, so I want to use this to teach myself a lesson. Don Quixote Dover Brother Ming. Hehe. It is worthy of being called the most dangerous Shichibukai by the warring states period. If it weren't for Yi Shaozai this time, perhaps the G20 branch would have suffered a lot of losses. But this time, this sea rogue lost a top cadre, which is a bit interesting. At this time, Luo Shu, who was in a luxurious villa in Mariajoya, put the hung-up phone bug into his arms, with a sneer on his lips, drank the wine in his hand, and thought secretly in his heart. Now that he has faced off against Doflamingo, of course he will not be timid, but will take the initiative. With the strength of the other party, Luo Shu can no longer be taken seriously. If there is one person in this world, there will be no garbage. The well-known saying that only incompetent people have devil fruits can be broken abruptly. That is Don Quixote Doflamingo, the former celestial dragon. He has shown since he was a child that he can become a king in the future. His qualifications and talents are enough to be considered powerful, but his superhuman line fruit ability suppresses the upper limit of his strength, so that even if he develops the fruit to the point of awakening, he is still unable to enter the level of a monster. If you replace him with another fruit, even an ancient one, with his talent and his own hard work, he cannot be said to be comparable to the three generals, but he is definitely not much weaker. But unfortunately, compared to today's Luo Shu, he is not even a little bit worse, and don't forget that Luo Shu's strength at this time is still a long way from the peak he can reach. And the outside world, major newspapers, yesterday received the news that Luo Shu has become after the news that the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters was also appointed as the governor of Beihai. He copied the newspaper overnight. Luo Shu was not surprised and made the headlines again. Luo Shu, the favored son of heaven, was promoted to Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters and once again broke the Navy's historical record. Become the youngest Lieutenant General in the history of the Navy. The civilians of Beihai can cheer. With such a naval general in charge of Beihai, how dare those pirates go to plunder? It has been more than 10 years since the Great Pirate Age began. Such a character has appeared in the Navy. Looking back at the pirate camp, no one can compare with him. Perhaps Lieutenant General Luo Shu has the ability to end the Great Pirate Age in the future. With the rise of the Navy, the North Sea has completely entered a pirate-free era. Just yesterday, thousands of pirates from the North Sea invaded the G20 branch, but were wiped out, leaving no one alive. Among them was one of the king's Shichibukai, Tenyusha Dover Diamandi, the top cadre under Brother Langming. A series of newspapers exaggerating Luo Shu's achievements are scattered in the sky along the Grand Route and the Four Seas. There are also similar news scattered over many islands in the New World. Not only did it describe Luo Shu's promotion, but even what happened in Beihai was dug out by members of the news agency. It must be said that those in their line of work have very good intelligence. When Doflamingo, who was in the New World and in the palace of Dressrosa, found out about this, he immediately went berserk with anger. If he hadn't been stopped by a group of subordinates, he almost took his people to Beihai to have a fight with Luo Shulai. A life-and-death battle. Of course, this was all because he was so angry, otherwise he would not have such an unwise idea. After a while, Doflamingo gradually calmed down, but he made an oath in front of all his men, claiming that he would fight Luo Shu until death. Although Diamante is not very strong and his work efficiency is not high, his identity is very special. When Doflamingo was in the most difficult time, it was Diamante, and Torrebel and the others were the first to pledge their allegiance. To him, he gave him devil fruit and taught him how to practice. Scenes from the past appeared in Doflamingo's mind. He was in great pain now, but he knew that he was no match for Luo Shu at the moment, so he thought of Kaido, the powerful helper of the 100 beasts, but the other party has always regarded him as a little person. If you want to take advantage of the other party, you need to think long term. Ha 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 ha. Did you see today's news headlines? Our Rear Admiral Luo Shu was promoted to Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, and he also became the governor of Beihai. In this way, which pirate dares to plunder in the North Sea? We finally don't have to live in fear anymore. That's right. Originally, I was thinking of buying a house in the waters under the jurisdiction of the G20 branch, but the housing prices there were so high. Now, the entire Beihai is under his jurisdiction, and I don't have to move. Those were thousands of pirates, and they were all killed. God is really eye-opening. With Lieutenant General Luo Shu sitting in Beihai, we can sit back and relax from now on. I have sent my son to join the Navy. I hope he can become a naval general like Vice Admiral Luo Shu in the future. The senior leaders of the Navy have done the right thing. The governor of the North Sea should have been replaced a long time ago. It is because of that incompetent guy that our North Sea has always been smoky and pirates are rampant. The civilians who returned to Beihai were overjoyed after seeing today's news headlines, and their whole bodies almost burst into tears. They gathered together one after another to share the news with some people who had not yet heard about the matter. After a while, everyone living in Beihai, from the elderly to the children who had just become directors, including those high-ranking officials and the king, all learned that Luo Shu was promoted to lieutenant general of the headquarters and concurrently served as governor of Beihai. Most of the people cried with joy. Yes, they were so excited. They had waited too long for this day. Think about it, these ordinary people once lived in an area known as the sea with the most pirates. Every day, what kind of life have you been living? Now that you are finally free from the influence of those negative factors, you no longer have to worry about your own safety. Even if you are so excited that you die suddenly, it is completely normal. Beihai, the headquarters of Germa 66, Vinsmoke Gaji was sitting on the throne, constantly flipping through the newspaper in his hand. His face looked extremely calm. Phew, it seems we made the right choice. Luo Shu has now been promoted to Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters and serves as the governor of Beihai. If we choose to go against him from the beginning, the consequences can be imagined. Gaji slowly put the newspaper aside, took a deep breath, and sighed in a low voice. He was really lucky now that during the battle between Luo Shu and Monkey D. Dragon, Germa 66 did not go to the other party's jurisdiction. Otherwise, he would not know how to face Luo Shu now. Father, our choice is indeed correct, but from now on, we are afraid that we will not be able to take on any war business in Beihai. Do you want to leave here? Leju stood below and said with a somewhat painful expression. She has deep feelings for Beihai. After all, this is her hometown. She really doesn't want to leave unless she has to. In fact, we, Germa 66, have saved a lot of money for so long. The reason why we want to take over those businesses is to cope with the large amount of heavenly gold that needs to be handed over every year. We can't just rest on our laurels. In this case, the Vinsmoke family, what can we do to regain the glory of the past? However, since we can no longer make war fortunes, we can do some serious business, and it is also a good thing for Germa 66. At least this way, we can brush up our reputation and change the views of the civilians on us. Jaji pinched the beard on his chin and said with some pride. In fact, he had already thought about it. In recent years, Germa 66 has done so many bad things. There is almost no one in the entire Beihai who doesn't know the name of the evil army. Now, if you completely change Germa 66, it is not too late. At the same time, if you want to dominate a sea area, you can't let everyone living here hate this ruler. He is also preparing to take over the North Sea in the future. My father is wise. I didn't expect you already had a plan. Look at the headlines in today's newspapers. Thousands of pirates who invaded the G20 branch were all massacred. Among them was King Shichibukai, the top official under Doflamingo. I think this is probably the case. The insidious guy was instigating it behind his back. Now he has caused his subordinates to die in Beihai. I am afraid that when he learns about this, he will jump in anger. After listening to Gaji's words, Reiju's eyes flashed. She flattered him first, and then changed the subject to Doflamingo. Since last year, she had been treating that cold-blooded, cruel man the Shichibukai hated it very much. The other party originally negotiated a deal with their Germa, but during the transaction, they wanted to take advantage of it. However, after all, Germa 66's power was a bit weak, so he suffered a bit. She suffered a loss in this matter. I have always been worried about it. Snort. Speaking of which, he had contacted me before and wanted us, Germa 66, to cooperate with his men and invade the G20 branch with a large number of pirates, but I refused. Doing such a stupid thing and wanting to get us Germa 66 together is really a wishful thinking. By the way, have you contacted your 3 brothers? How is the matter you asked them to handle? Gaji snorted heavily and started to mock. Then, he asked Reiju. When I contacted the 3 of them last night, they said that the item had been obtained and was returning to the North Sea. I believe it will arrive in a few days. However, the price we paid this time was high. Most of the elite soldiers of Germa 66 were lost, and even 3 of them were seriously injured. The White Wolf also died because of this. Reiju nodded and said, but at the end, her voice became deeper. Although the White Wolf she spoke of was not a member of the Vinsmoke family, it was an army of Germa 66. Captain, he was a famous pirate in the North Sea before. However, due to his high bounty and many evil deeds, the Navy sent a branch lieutenant general to hunt him down. He was seriously injured after fighting with the opponent, but he was accidentally killed by their Germa after being rescued by 66. Since all White Wolf's men were killed in the battle, he no longer wanted to be a pirate, so he joined Germa 66, and was very sincere to the Vinsmoke family. If you want something in return, you must first know how to give. The White Wolf died for us, Germa 66. From now on, we should be kind to his family. That thing is very important to us. I believe that only it can resolve the grudge between us and Luo Shu. The legendary Holy Sword 7-star sword, although I don't know what level of famous sword it belongs to, but judging from its weirdness, it is even better than the 21 skills of the Great Sword. Jaji clenched his fists and said in an extremely firm voice. Although the loss was huge, enough to break Germa 66's muscles and bones, he believed that everything was worth it. Even if it was damaged as a result, his strongest subordinate White Wolf also did not hesitate. The holy sword known as the Curse was discovered by him not long ago from some documents of the Vinsmoke family, so he immediately dispatched his strong men. He took his 3 sons and elite soldiers to the kingdom of Asgard to rob him. I have to admit that Vinsmoke Gaji was indeed very courageous at certain times, despite the fact that he always thought about domination in his heart. Beihai, but without certain brains and means, he would not have been able to survive for such a long time under the surveillance of the world government. More than a big knife 21. Could it be the 12 skills of the supreme sharp sword? Reiju was completely shocked by her father's words. There are only 12 supreme swords in the world. She knows very well what that means. The only known person who has the supreme sword is the world's greatest sword. Hawkeye, and Whitebeard Edward Newgate. Both of these 2 are world-famous strong men. Now a famous sword of the same grade is about to appear again, and it was obtained by their Germa 66. Even though this sword, the knife, is meant to be given to others, but it is an honor to be able to pass it through their hands. Who knows? Anyway, that holy sword is good. Gaji shook his head. The literature did not explain the grade of the holy sword. It only said that it was extremely strange and had brought countless disasters to the kingdom of Asgard. However, based on this information alone, he could not conclude that it was the supreme sword. 12 quick skills. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.